This one.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, right now. Okay. All right, I think we're set to go. You put your thing, put the speaker up high, pretty high, so I could hear it because I've got the one ear. Just as that.
Mr. Mayor, we see you online there.
Yeah.
Been talking already?
Sorry about that. I didn't realize my computer volume was turned down all the way. So if people were acknowledging that Charlotte and I had logged on, we missed it because we didn't have
Yeah.
any sound.
That's why I put. That's almost like.
You're gonna be right sitting there the whole time.
Mhm.
Yeah. You want me to fix a pillow for you?
No.
All right. I couldn't do that. That was my- Did you see that? Okay.
You click up one just a little bit.
Like this?
No, it's still a free for all.
Okay. 5:30 official.
Yeah, 5:45, isn't that? 5:30?
I think it's 5:30 on the agenda.
5:30 for the,
Okay, back up a little bit. I want to see the whole line. There you go. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
The people there for pizza.
Yeah.
and we can do the URA budget.
You should have gone. Done it on the phone. Sorry.
It's a good looking crowd there at the dais.
Where?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we're feasting, Scott.
Yep. Good. Good. Enjoy the pizza.
Yeah. It's my
You know, we
fault.
used to see you all the time.
Yeah.
Where's your wife? She's on the budget committee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
she
right here.
she doesn't like to be on camera.
No, it's not so much as that. I have to sit back with my back. So
Okay,
Right.
we'll accept that, Charlotte.
okay, thanks, guys.
This time.
Oh my God, who said that this
Bruce.
time?
Bruce. So are we going to wait then till 5:45 to call the meeting to order?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. We actually published we'll do the supplemental budgets first. So
Right.
the first thing we'll need is to convene as the URA agency board.
And I want to confirm, Mayor, you can now see the presentation, correct?
Yes, I can. And I'm just looking at the agenda though, and the agenda said 5:30 for URA supplemental budget hearing. So that's why I was asking if we're waiting until 5:45 because it's 5:31 right now.
You can go whenever you decide to convene the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, we will go ahead then and open the meeting, and we'll begin with the land acknowledgement statement. The Chinookan peoples, known as the Clackamas and Cascades, are the indigenous people of the land now inhabited by the city of Wood Village and other areas of the Columbia River. The village of Nechockley was located near today's Blue Lake Park. Ancestral life of these people included a seasonal round of resource gathering and stewardship from the Wapato fields and fishing areas of the Columbia River to the cedar and huckleberry gathering areas of the High Cascades. Introduced disease from early settlers dramatically reduced the number of these people. They signed the Willamette Valley Treaty of 1855 with the United States government and were forcibly removed to the Grand Ronde Indian Reservation. We thank the descendants of these tribes for being the original stewards and protectors of these lands since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many Indigenous Native American families today. We are honored by the collective work of many Native nations, leaders, and families who are demonstrating resilience, resistance, revitalization, healing, and creativity, and we are honored to be guests upon these lands. And now the first item on our agenda is the URA supplemental budget hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll go ahead and start the presentation. So before we get into the next year's budget, we wanted to make sure to take care of a little business regarding this year's budget. And there's two principal reasons why we're doing it. First is have new auditors this year. So we, with Mariner and Company, we took out an RFP last spring for competitive bid. And we selected Polly Rogers and Company, who had been our auditors, I think, up until 2014. And so this is their first year back. And so we have a number of recommendations that came out of that process that ended in December that they recommended that we do this year. So URA and the city both have some of those. And since we're in front of you anyway, we're going to clean up the books and make sure that we get our contingencies and expenditures in order. So with that, so a supplemental budget's required in some cases. Usually it's the condition is not known when the budget was present. And it's a formal action that the council has to take to amend the work that's done by the budget committee and the adoption. Usually it's unforeseen. It can't be something you know about. And it also is how you tap your contingencies. So before you can actually spend the contingencies in the you need to have a council action or a resolution that authorizes the expenditures of those. So when you see the contingencies in the budget, know that even though that's appropriated, in order for council to actually spend it, there needs to be an additional action before that expenditure can be made. Oh. So, Mr. Mayor, are you the chair of the chair? Okay. We're public hearing for the Urban Renewal Agency supplemental budget.
Are you waiting for a motion?
Mayor.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I don't have specific language for it, but I would say that we should go ahead and open the public hearing for the Wood Village Urban Renewal Agency.
And I will say that the notice was published last Wednesday in the Gresham Outlook. We published it on our website. We also put it in our newsletter. And if somebody wanted to submit written testimony, they could submit it by 5 o'clock tonight, or they were always welcome to come to the meetings. We didn't have any written submissions for any of the supplemental budgets or the budget committee. So I just want that clear. We have opened up the floor for public comment. So the first item for the consider is an opportunity to purchase vacant property within the district. Estimated cost is 1.5 million. So what this would do, the council discussed this in executive session on their February 20th. It was the Vista View property. You guys had approved an incentive agreement for 3.5 years ago. And there's an opportunity for us to purchase that and then either convey it to a developer who would develop it privately, or there's an option to try and partner with another regional government agency to develop that for affordable housing. Ultimate endpoint has not been determined, but they reached out and opportunity to help influence how that property develops, which is akin to the incentive agreement that 3.5 years ago. Funding for the purchase would come from contingency, and it would also come from development incentives that we are not planning on spending, because we did budget close to $500,000 for the incentive on Vista View had it started development and gone forward. And it would also utilize $300,000 in capital outlay. And then
Seth,
Second.
could I ask a question for that before we move to the second
Yep.
one? Reduce the permits and inspections and the development incentive. One of the things that we talked about, if we were to sell it to the private developer, that we may need to sell it to them at less than what we paid for it. And that then the loss would be recognized as their development incentive. They wouldn't get any other incentives to build on the property. So if we use some of that budgeted development incentive to buy the land, and then we sell it at a loss, saying that that's the development incentive, are we spending the development incentive twice?
No, we wouldn't be spending the development incentive twice. We reached out to Elaine Howard, who are a consultant who helped us with the original URA plan passed in 2019. Talk about how this would affect our maximum indebtedness. Basically, once we spend it, even if we sell it and then the money comes back, it comes back unrestricted, and it won't again count towards our maximum indebtedness. So we wouldn't get in the situation where we've and $11.5 million that the agency has. If we buy it for $1 million, sell it for $1 million, and spend the money again, we've actually consumed $2 million of our maximum indebtedness. That was quite common and was done by a lot of agencies that actually bought property and sold them.
And in terms of just kind of the dollars and cents, you actually see shortly in the urban renewal proposed budget for next fiscal, you actually see 800,000 coming back in. So it's this current fiscal 1.15 going out. We're anticipating the sale next fiscal with then a slightly lesser amount coming back in. And that 800,000, like Seth said, doesn't go against the maximum indebtedness. We could essentially spend it again without hitting the cap.
Awesome.
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
If we buy the property, takes it effectively off tax rolls,
Yes.
For the period that we hold it.
then we're talking about possibly building affordable housing. Would that be city owned
No,
and managed or?
No. It would be selling to another entity for the purpose of providing some sort of affordable housing or some sort of workforce something. But we would not be developing anything ourselves.
Would we limit the sales for just affordable housing, or would it be open to any developer?
That's up to the urban renewal board at the time. We still haven't even signed the PSA yet, the purchase and sales agreement. So at the time we actually close on it and it becomes, the agencies, that's the time for the agency to gather and have that discussion. Okay, now we have it. What path do we want to go on in reselling it? Is it much like City Hall, where let's just go with the highest best development? Or is it something different that's looking at, maybe affordable housing or workforce development or something of that nature? And that's for you all to decide at a later point.
Is this, when you talk about affordable housing, are we talking about affordable housing or subsidized housing?
There's a number of different options, and we fortunately have a number of different agencies that do. I know that Metro is looking for partners for their affordable housing bond.
The county is looking for partners. There's even nonprofits looking for different projects. Some of them, they get different tax increment financing themselves that reduce their long-term liabilities. And so they're able to rent it at less than market rate. Some actually just build at market rate, but then through vouchers or other programs, rent them at less than market rate. So there's probably 100 ways you could slice and dice, call it an affordable or workforce project. And that's, again, up for the urban renewal board once we close on it to decide that path. Even if we just sell for highest and best use, you as a board, much like City Hall site, could say, no, we want these things as part of this package. And it could just be, we want X number of units at some sort of less than market rate. And we want this kind of, commercial space as part of it. But the rest is kind of free game.
Okay, well, I guess the bottom line is, why are we buying the property and not just having it sold to a?
That is a great question. And I am with you. I was never one to, cities, in my view, or public agencies shouldn't be landholders. Government intervention works best when there's a market failure, and nothing against the sellers of this. It has been very hard to get it purchased. Other developers had actually tried to pursue it first and they walked away. That's based on negotiations, packages, et cetera. Part of that's due to the people who own it now foreclosed on it, and they don't want this asset. They just want they were in a small investment, a couple people who were investors, and they invested early in this project thinking they'd get their money back out once it was financed. It never got financed, so they foreclosed on it. They don't want it. They want their money back. That's a different kind of property seller than one that just has a, dirt for sale that would just, yeah, I can hold it for another 9 months while you get your full entitlements. And, that 18-month process it takes from when you want to buy something for a development to you can then build on it. This seller doesn't want to do any of that. They're like, I own dirt. I want to sell this dirt.
Okay, are we getting this at a fire sale price?
We're getting it at market.
And why would not another company or developer come along and buy it at market?
They're not going to buy it without getting contingencies to get full entitlements. They're not going to tie up their cash for 18 months. And the seller's not going to have an 18-month closing period. We're getting 90 days.
Just not comfortable going into the real estate business, honestly.
It's not something that city staff would have ever recommended.
It's,
As you're going out and looking for something, this was really, people were contacting us, asking what the deal was with the property and why they were having issues trying to
Buy it.
the way that they would normally buy commercial real estate.
It sounds personally, I mean, I'll run with everybody else if they want to go with this, but it sounds a little sketch to me. So
We're still doing all of our due diligence. We know there's a clean title on it. So it's free and clean dirt. There's a lot of concern because it was foreclosed, but we've got a title report that is ensuring the foreclosure, and we're doing the full environmental. We actually have an analysis in hand, and then we're also doing what's called a phase one, which is a little more due diligence to make sure what the dirt is. Those are, in talking with attorneys and everything else, your two biggest liabilities. Is it your dirt to resell, and is the dirt clean dirt?
When and Stan, I appreciate your caution here. Some of the conversation we've had at the council over the last year or longer is what part can we play in trying to deal with homelessness, affordable housing for people that are of incomes, and a large percentage of our population in the city are incomes that can't afford the byway. And I certainly know they can't afford the new complex up here on top of the hill by Cherry Park. So it's been a conceptual conversation. If we could move forward and with this potential, move forward and then begin to get into conversations about how this could work into maybe 4 units or 8 units of affordable housing. And I think of, I define affordable, but my own definition is not $2,300 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment.
all right, market rate is not really affordable anymore.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
not.
argument there.
You just can't do it. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong here, this does not obligate us to buy this property if our due diligence says that, hey, there's a problem here, or if the market just collapses, or we don't get the potential buyer that we want. Correct?
So what this does is it allows us to sign the PSA, the purchase sales agreement, which hopefully will come before the board in a week or so. We're fine tuning the last provision. This allows us to sign it. That then essentially starts the due diligence period. If anything in there, the board says we're not comfortable, or we get reports back that says we're not comfortable with this, we get our earnest money back.
Yeah.
There's a period where we essentially we don't get my time back. We don't get some of the lawyers' time back. There are some sunk costs, but 12,000, give or take. We can get everything back, and it just goes back on the market. We do have sellers asking, have you signed a PSA yet? Have you closed on it yet? because they've worked with us in the past and they know we're good to work with, and they need the 18 months to put a package together, get entitlements before they're going to close on it. That's what's typical. And that this seller doesn't do that. That's why the intervention. And with that, there is a bigger hand in how it does redevelop. Because you can say, no, we're not going to sell it to you if you're just going to build X. We want X and Y, or X, Y, and Z.
And I just hear too many urban renewal agencies that get deep trouble by doing these type of transactions, realizing that they made a big mistake down the road because they wind up selling it for a fraction of what they paid. And the 8 ball. So if we go through with this, I hope we really have our everything lined up and we don't take a big hit. As a small city, we can't afford a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 hit. Even a $200,000 hit's gonna. We're small. We're conservatively, financial standpoint, always been very conservative. This, I feel, is like we're kind of going out there, putting the city at risk and taking this property off the tax rolls and then getting sucked in by some developer who'll give us half the value and we're just stuck with it. So, I mean, I'll run with I've always been a team player. I'll run with whatever the council and URA wants to do, but personally, I'm just not comfortable with the urban renewal agency going in the real estate business.
Quick question. I like the fact that Stan is bringing those issues up. The money part of it, I believe can be used. We use money for other things, for the betterment of the city, for the betterment of the people of the city, the road, a variety of things. City spent money and good things for the city and the citizens. One of the questions I have in this giving the land, we 300,000 in, and in essence, we're giving somebody benefit of 300,000. Is it going to be used to elevate the land if, assuming all those other ifs come together? Is it going to be increasing the value of the real estate for taxable purposes, for property taxes in the city Multnomah offers for Wood Village? So in essence, you're investing for the benefit for the future. That's the only way you get that other money back.
And we would,
And I don't know if the accounting rules on a deal like this end up being that they say, well, we had a gift given to us. That doesn't go into our costs of building the site out and making their discounted value real estate. If those things have some other property tax deferrals or something, because we said, oh, well, we're going to use it for low-income housing, all of a sudden the property tax value for Wood Village goes away. I'm saying then that makes it also a bad investment. That's my point. So I'm kind of supporting what you're saying, but is it an investment that comes back to you in the future?
and there's a number of ways you could, if you were to sell to a private developer, we were just holding it, and so that facilitate a transaction and get someone who's interested to actually build something on it. Like the byway, some of that was a direct incentive in terms of we paid the permit costs for them up to a certain point, 5% of the total. Some of it was we moved stormwater and sewer lines that were on the property, and also the cost of acquiring the various right-of-ways and other parcels. So if we sold it for less than what we bought it for, count that as part of their development incentive. They would obviously have to apply because the Vista View incentive expired. So they would have to bring forward a package. And when they brought forward a package, that's where the board would say, we will do this, but in order for you, for us to sell it and for you to get incentives, we need to see these things that are above and beyond design criteria review. Kind of like what happened with City Hall, where the clock tower and some of the amenities that they put in or above and beyond what you would normally expect out of that type of development. And that, again, that would come back before the board. That would require an incentive agreement where the board and whoever was interested in buying the property had to come to some.
And it would just be, it's very similar to the other incentives that you've adopted is what's that cash value back to the agency over the life of the agency? You get up to 25% of that. We would essentially kind of apply it up front as a discounted purchase rate. So that is the entire incentive. So hypothetically, we buy it for 1.15, say we sell it for 8. We're done. And there's certain performance metrics that they must meet in terms of that incentive and sales agreement. And so if they then didn't build what they said they're going to build, essentially we'd build in clawbacks that we get some of that back.
And the assessor doesn't look at related to accounting or real market value when they're coming up with the assessment on the property. I shouldn't say anything. They have an entirely separate formula that looks at comparables and structures and underlying land value that
Yeah, they won't.
Whatever arrangement that we come up with wouldn't impact.
Yeah, they'll say the land value is the land value is the land value, regardless of what we sell it for. They're going to do their black box magic. BOLI will take a look at the land value and any discounts for prevailing wage purposes. The assessor won't. They're going to look at as a package.
Yeah, because I'm, as an accountant, I look at, as a builder, you go in and here's what my costs are.
Yeah.
Create that, and then there's markup for value and whatever. That helps you get to value. That's the cost basis, a way of doing appraisal. But if the city is giving 300, right, treated as cost, or was it just charity? That's, I think, where Stan's coming at. The city, are we in the charity business, or are we in the development of the city resources?
Yeah,
Again,
it's not charity. Every development that happens within the urban renewal zone has the opportunity to get those community development incentives, like Greg said, up to 25% of that taxable value. Our URA is written to where that public benefit is based on a council vote. And we don't have to give it to any property. And essentially what Greg is saying here is that if we were to sell it as a loss, the loss would be the entire public benefit. You wouldn't be able to come back and ask us to also to pay for permits or to pay to move some utilities or anything like that. You would know up front that you've already gotten all of the public benefit that the URA rules allow. And then in terms of affordable housing, we've learned in the past that, if it goes to Home Forward, that means it's off the tax rolls. But we're now learning that while it's not necessarily mechanically simple, that there is a clear path to selling the land to a private developer, but keeping the rents affordable with a sunset, somewhere between 20 and 60 years, where the homes would be legitimately affordable, somewhere below employment rate housing, which is 60%, down to the affordable, which is 30% of the median income, and the property still pays property taxes. And so there's a lot still for the council to consider there, but there is a way to have it be affordable and have it still pay property taxes. And if we were to resell it at full price and go out and give development incentives, then 25% of the tax value could conceivably be greater than the loss. We could be setting up to give away a bigger incentive if we sell it for full price. And we do have a seller or a buyer that as Greg mentioned, has already asked, do we have a PSA? When can we start working with you? So chances are we're not going to have a hold of it for very long. And if we have a hold of it for any length of time, it'll be because the council decided that they wanted to find a private developer that can build affordable housing.
Just quick question, and this potential buyer, do they know up front of the potential discount that is already included in what that kind of like entitles to them, basically?
Yes.
And from staff perspective, there is a sense that they are in agreement of what is proposed already?
There hasn't been a formal proposal, but they understand what working with you are incentives.
And there's like some type of interest though.
Yes.
I get calls every couple of weeks asking, where is this at?
Is that willingness to include the conversations about affordable housing? Has that been a part of the conversation?
From one, it has. From the other, hasn't been directly talked about. Again, there's kind of there's the quick flip, and that's just going to be, I'm going to call it very similar to the Byway project, where you the look and feel and maybe some amenities. The longer term is there are people who have interest in putting together a more complex, comprehensive package, whether it be for veterans, elderly. Like I said, you can just slice it 100 ways. That takes time to slice it.
This buyer though that is keeps calling you, is that our quick flip?
That's the quick flip.
That's the quick flip. Yep. Okay.
So that's,
Have no other questions.
And again, this authorizes the money. It doesn't authorize the purchase. It doesn't even close the purchase.
I know you are.
and there would, if we do decide to go the affordable housing route, there would be a lot of discovery and we would have to investigate this. There are some partners who better than others and some, given the idea of affordable housing, kind of a dirty name in the metro area. So we would want to make sure, and we would the board would direct staff to do a lot of investigation and due diligence, go down the route. And Metin's executive session, we did talk about the quick flip. You're talking 12 to 18 months. Want to go the affordable housing route, you're talking about 3 or 4 years.
And that's for the board to decide.
Yeah.
You will tell us what direction you want to go. That's not a staff decision.
Now, excuse me for interrupting, but when somebody buys a property and they're going to put housing on it, the city can't tell them you have to build at market. You can't tell them they have to build affordable.
If it's general dirt, no. If it's dirt the city, or in this case, the agency owns, you can. You can dictate, we're not going to sell it to you unless you do this.
That's
But
if we own the property.
That's if we own it. If it's just dirt in the open, we cannot dictate. We can dictate look and feel and what the use is. We can't dictate what the leases are or anything like that.
Okay, since we're going to buy this property, what is the council's view? What are going to be the guidelines? Is it going to be at market? Is it going to be?
Well, I think that there's still discussions to be had, Stanley. I think, like I said, we've only talked about it in one executive session. Offline conversations that I've had with Greg is that we know the quick flip people. They will build at market rate, but it will be high quality development and relatively easy to get along with, so to speak. And then, like I say, we have been learning how we can sell privately, have affordable housing there, but still have it pay property tax. And the most common way that I'm finding in the articles I'm reading is that you actually direct solicit BIPOC developers who are looking to make their way or make their name in this space, looking for that keystone project. And one of the things that they offer when they make their bid is a 60-year sunset on the affordability. So most projects, like a lot in California, had a 20-year, and now the same, people of lesser means still live there, but their rent is about to go to market rate. And so, we would push for that 60-year sunset. So it's conceivable, you could move in there as an adult and live there all of your life without your rent ever going to market rate. But we're in the infancy of that. And of course, we'd speed up the learning curve if we decided that that's the way we want it to go. And I've already talked to at least, one builder in that space who wants the RFP if that's the way we decide to go. And he thinks it's just brilliant and that we're the most kind-hearted city on the planet, and he would cut his rate to do the work for us. He just developed 600 affordable units with Naya and NARA, and he's done it before, so he's got a lot of experience in the space. But it's it is an opportunity that, and like I say, and based on our past experience, seems unprecedented, because we always thought that affordable meant that it was run by somebody else and that it was taken off the tax rolls. But we're slowly learning that that doesn't have to be the case.
And just the executive section was to give direction to staff of whether or not to.
Yeah, we didn't come to any conclusions about
There
what
are
we were
no
going to do
conclusions,
with it.
and also
Yeah.
to direct staff to do due diligence on financing. Do we have the money? Can we use bond funds? What are the restrictions? Is this actually doable? And if it's doable, then bring the money piece forward as part of the budget, and then ESA to the board so that then have a discussion about, is this, do we even want to acquire the property? And if we do, what would we be?
Because it's also not uncommon, and Fairview's doing this right now. They purchased, gosh, I want to say about 5 acres in Fairview Village, and they're just saying, developers, tell us your vision for this site that meets these objectives. Again, another avenue the board could go, fine, we're going to do this RFP, let people essentially bid on what they're going to build. You all get to select, gee, we know these developers, we know their product. These ones have great ideas, but they may just be idea people, not money behind it. And you all decide the fate of that property. Like I said, a lot of ways you could slice and dice it. Right now, it's just the money to actually acquire it. Then there's the next step of how you want to essentially offload it.
I just want to pause and see if there's any other questions or comments here related to the funding, because if the funding doesn't get passed, then we will not bring the. So, further questions about that piece?
Just again, the clarification of what our action would be tonight is simply, well, not simply, there's some, I think, some very good points being raised here tonight, and I'm happy to have the members here from the Urban Renewal Board and myself to have us thinking through this. Our action tonight is to allow this money to be spent should we want to purchase the property. I just whispered to Stan, I appreciate his comments, because I do know also, I've been reading of Portland getting themselves in trouble with making deals with developers that are supposed to build affordable housing and they don't. And the big tower that's being built in Portland right now, it's tied up in lawsuits, and the city is trying to get this developer to build the affordable housing and keeps kind of blowing off the city saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And they're not getting built. So those are cautions that I certainly have in this, but I feel like if we have enough opportunity here to explore whether we're going to go down this path, and as several members here tonight have said, get in the real estate business. And I don't want to be a part of a real estate development enterprise. But I also want us to be able to take advantage of this opportunity if we can, and if we can do it right. There is a lot of money that's being made available through various federal programs and regional programs. And if there's an opportunity to capitalize on that money, and all the other ifs, then I'm comfortable going forward. But those are a lot of ifs, and it makes me certainly pause to think about the ifs that have been brought up here tonight.
I'll add, Leather. I am assuming this move or measure is RA 1, 2. As a member of the Urban Renewal Board, we're putting our trust in Maine General Counsel. We're saying, yeah, you can have the money, but the decisions, the other work that has to be done is at the level. And I think I'm going to speak for Stan, maybe. As long as you listen to what he said, and I think, and maybe that I added to, I think you consider those things, then I'd say we give you the blessing and say, you guys go forward, make a decision, again, for the betterment of the city and the citizens. The money, I'd say, yeah, we can vote on this. So I'd be making a motion to do this with those caveats.
Before we make a motion, I also wanted to point out one of the changes that is included is just a movement of into categories that the auditor suggested that we stop using interfund transfers and start using the category of special payments. That was one of the recommendations, and it's included in the resolution in front of you. That's the housekeeping item. The other is moving so that it would allow for the purchase of the property should the PSA.
And I would just say, before Mr. Rush reads off the motion, that the mechanics of how this might happen is up to staff. Whether or not it happens is still up to the elected board. So even though we clear spending the money, it doesn't mean that we put staff in the decision business. Just to allay any fears that you might have there, Steve.
I just like to add that as long as they're going to have due diligence, but our personal piggy bank as taxpayers is to sit back negatively if we screw it up. But I'm with agreement with Steve.
Okay. Entertain the motion then.
I move that we accept 1-2022.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to again reinforce the conversations we're having here tonight. And I certainly feel a greater sense of responsibility here in this conversation, and making sure that as a city, we don't take a long shot gamble. This has got to be a pretty solid deal to move forward. And I certainly will go on record and say that here.
It was not lost on staff prior to this, and certainly reinforced with what I'll call a thunder in terms of over $1 million into a project that needs to deliver some enormous results for the long-term benefit of the community.
All right, then we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution URA 1-2022 carries. Thank you. Now we will open the public hearing for the city's supplemental budget consideration.
All right, so one of our 4 meetings and boards is the second one is again an action for this year's budget 2021-22 for the city. This one has 2 pieces or 3 pieces. So the first, again, I'll start off by blaming the auditors for So two of the things that they said that came out of the audit process was first, you should separate your system development charge, water and sewer in one fund and parks in the other. So that what you have before you is we are doing that. We're separating Fund 35 into two funds, Fund 35 and Fund 36. And we're moving of parks SDCs and the transfer out of the general fund over to that new fund. Second is that they said you need to appropriate all of the funds. So this is something that we cover every year at the budget. It's included as part of the supplementals, but we weren't putting it in the appropriation ordinance. So what we're doing is formally appropriating it. So we did it, we're doing that so that in next year's audit, they won't issue us a same finding. And we are also in the city's budget this year going to be put it in the appropriation ordinance. So those were the two things that required a public hearing and a supplemental budget. And here's what that looks like. I like that we're splitting apart the system development charge fund into two funds, and the internal service fund is recognizing the appropriation, and we're adding two items, one for additional vehicle maintenance, because we've had a lot of vehicles break or catalytic converters be stolen off of city vehicles recently. And then also installation of the ops flagpole when we move City Hall and move the flagpole from the pressure safe location to the ops building. It was budgeted last year. We thought it was going to get done by June 30th. It didn't apply. So we're funding from that would come from the unspent funds from the year before. So housekeeping, these are things that are funded out of contingency. First, at February 4th council meeting, we updated council on how the utility assistance funds that was funded with ARPA funds was doing. We told them we were probably going to run out of money at the end of March, early April. They said, how much would it take to run that through June 30th? Forecasting, and said you'd need about $1,000 to run it through June 30th. They said, bring us a supplemental budget item so that we, and so that's the first item. There was some ODOT redid a median out here on 238th, and they had to tear up our irrigation. Call it. Chips for the park. So this would have been included in our budget that starts in July 1st. John to bring in all new chips for the playground and then to completely redo the trail system now that the Hawthorne is done. Hawthorne Trailhead is done. And we said, why would you wait till July 1st? Let's put it in the supplemental budget and get them out there before we get our heavy use season. That's why this one is included. And then there was a wastewater main line plugged by a Fatberg. We had Factor and Scope.
Who's Fatberg?
That's what happens when you dump grease down your sink drain and think it's just gonna go to a magical place. No, it collects in the pipe.
Oh, so like an iceberg, but
But a fast, there you go. The Fogberg, I guess.
Like a triple bypass. I think it's
Good
clogged. We had sewage coming and running along until it hit another manhole. So there was some cleanup. It was a fun weekend for John. So there are some costs associated with that. And so we wanted to fund that out of contingency as part of the supplemental budget. John promised we're not going to have any main breaks or well breaks the last week of June. We're not going to have any budgetary findings where we have an emergency that we had to spend money on.
he does have in the budget though, a crystal ball though, right?
Yes, that was,
Put it this way, if something breaks kind of and we can hold off for a week and it happens end of June, he's gonna wait a week.
All right.
and finally, new business. So this was not identified in the publication so the publication went out April 13th. We had a council meeting on April 14th. One of the items brought forward on the 14th was authorizing essential worker pay, retroactive, so it'd be $100 There's two pieces and kind of two reasons why the management team. First is in recognition of continuing service. Kept our doors open when we asked a lot of our staff in terms of having them do PPE, had them work from home, use their personal.
Seth, you're really breaking up out here in TV land.
Sorry, I'll move my microphone closer.
Okay.
And also, they just really stepped up. A lot of agencies are dealing with people who are leaving. Employee retention has been a big issue. The other piece is inflation this last year was 7.5%. Our union contract maxes out at 4%, which is fine in any given 1 year, but we don't want to fall too far behind because we already know that there are other agencies that are wanting to poach our good people. And so this would also kind of be a one-time bridge before we employee compensation study as part of the annual performance plan, which is then funded in next year's budget. So there's kind of two pieces. One is a thank you, kind of backward looking at thank you for the service that you've done. The other one's forward looking of, because Greg, we talked about this. It's like, if we lost 2 people and had to go out for recruitments, that would be essentially the same as doing this because of all the time and money and effort that you put into it, and also lack of ability to continue to provide service when we're have vacancies. So the total cost would be about 44,000, and it would be across all funds. The fund split is there for you guys to take a look at. That was not included as part of what we published because we hadn't presented it to council yet. And so if this was something that council wanted to do, you'd have to make a motion to amend, make the motion, you'd have to make it as amended and include this. Those are the 3 components of this. Questions, comments, concerns?
Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and I've not heard any questions, comments, or concerns from anyone there at the dais. And so I would entertain a motion then on resolution 8-2022. Is that what it is? Sorry. Lost my place in the, 8-2022.
Yeah, I think
The motion would need to be made by a council member.
Right, because it's 8, not 1 or 2. It's not a budget committee or a URA motion. Sorry. Yep.
I move to approve resolution 8-2022, including additional changes to the public notice as discussed. A resolution authorizing the appropriations of the contingency and making supplemental appropriations to the funds.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. And now we will then open the URA proposed budget hearing.
Meeting 3 of 4 tonight.
Okay. And before we do that, I'm gonna beg your pardon and go grab something to drink. So I need just a couple minutes.
We want to take a
Yeah, I think.
2 to 5 minute break.
hold on now,
Yeah.
don't you-
Where are the restrooms at?
Here in the hallway.
Hey, we got 3 now. So there's no waiting anymore. Instead of just 1. Oh, yeah, urban renewal.
Hungry. No. Can you grab me the TV thing? The TV thing.
I take it we did a 5-minute internet lounge break.
Yeah, yeah. I had to go get something to drink.
Oh,
That's
This-
Byron's, that was
yeah.
Steve.
Got chocolate milk because at heart and at the dinner table, I'm a 5-year-old.
oh, it's a good choice, actually.
Well, it came down to there were people who felt that you needed to get 2 pepperoni pizzas. And people who felt that you should get a Hawaiian and a pepperoni, so you can offer. I just want to point out, Hawaiian is almost 3/4 gone. Well, the pepperoni is only half gone, so I
Yeah,
feel like we
How
made the right
funny.
choice.
I went to the Hawaiian.
I voted Hawaiian.
I very seldom get Hawaiian pizza.
Plain.
Some people,
Pepperonis with jalapenos, I think it'd be a different.
Peppers, but we're like, some people, pepperoni doesn't agree with them, and so if we get 3 with pepperoni on it,
yeah.
and them only eating the cheese and veggie option.
And you know, it's really like a pie, so they should have brought a pizza to you too.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. But still see a couple of empty chairs at the dais there, so we'll hang out for just a minute while we wait for folks to come back.
Yeah.
Where are we anyway on here? Is it proposed budget hearing or
It's after the URA proposed budget hearing.
this?
After urban renewal.
In the window. Oh, no, I gotta vote.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I believe that is everyone back.
All right, then we will go ahead and call to order the URA's proposed budget hearing. And the first item on the agenda is the election of officers. And so I would entertain a motion that we elect Stan chair.
I'm just gonna make the motion.
Well, that was a motion we have. I mean, it's,
I didn't hear everything the mayor said.
there needs to be a chair of the budget committee for urban renewal and the mayor nominated member Dirks.
Stan Dirks.
I'll second that.
Thank you, John.
Any further discussion from anyone other than Stanley? All right, then, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Stanley, the URA proposed budget hearing is yours.
Okay, I guess, budget officer presentation.
Yes, and I'm not the budget officer, but I have been delegated the presenting for the urban renewal for this year.
It was a good stretch assignment.
Yes.
Stretch assignment. I
Yeah.
like.
He told me if I was gonna have pie, I needed to earn it tonight, so. So this is presenting the budget for the Urban Renewal Agency. We'll just start off with some highlights. again, the urban renewal is funded entirely with tax increment financing, has been since its inception. And you can see here how the total plant area has grown over the life of the. And you can also see how the development in Riverwood, 7 units that are by the bottle drop, and ultimately Byway will impact taxes returned to the agency, act as a resource for doing projects that benefit the agency and the district. So one thing to note is we adjusted our revenue projections. We had thought that county would assess the part of the byway that was did as of January 1st, 21, because they had, I think, two buildings.
They had one by January 1st. They did their second one just after.
But they were in construction on 3 or 4. The county ended up not putting any of it on the tax roll. They put it all into construction in progress. So the entirety of the byway should come online was finished by January 1st, 2022, which means that we get the taxes for that in November of 2022, which would be so a little bit of a delay. And again, sometimes the assessor does it one way and sometimes they push it off till the next year. Tell us ahead of time. So that is the major adjustment. And that's just kind of summarizing what's here. And again, once that growth happens, the agency gets all of the taxing district, all the overlapping taxing district on the growth in assessed value that happens within its boundaries. You can see that here. We have a total increment above the frozen base of 41 million. We get the overlapping value. And so we're projecting this year to be above 600,000, which is a big leap from where it was last year. And we're not budgeting all of that. One of the things we've noticed, pandemic has not impacted property values negatively in the Portland area. They continue to, I think Portland the Portland metro area had double-digit growth last year. Where we are seeing it is the uncollectible property taxes have gone up from their historical average of around 4% to now 6%. So we've built that in here and we're discounting uncollectible taxes. So with that, we are putting a budget for your tax increment financing revenue from property taxes at 590 and reflected in your budget document. This is the operating budget for the agency. The other thing is that we've dropped the interest assumptions, but in total, your operational revenue has increased. Personnel, materials and services outside of overhead have increased slightly. What has not increased slightly is the debt cost. So last year we had a principal payment on the 2020 full faith and credit bonds, a principal payment of 150,000 and interest of 50. This upcoming year we have our principal payments of 440,000. We structured it so that it would ramp up as the tax value came online so that we match our payments to our revenue stream. Here's a breakdown of the personnel expenditures and how we came to the allocation. Here's the details of what's included in the materials and supplies budget. The biggest thing, again, is the debt service, and that is made up both of the original $1.2 million loan that came in from the general fund that helped us move forward on the byway initially, and then the URA bonds that were issued by the city on behalf of the agency 2020. One of the changes, and again, something that we showed you last year, or I shouldn't say that. When we sold the bonds, this was the projection for the difference between the revenue and operating expenditures of the agency. That has actually changed because of the delay in the byway getting on the tax rolls. And then also one of the assumptions that was changed was last year we had kept the Vista View property in the projection. We have since taken that out because it went through the foreclosure process and they're looking for a buyer. So when we did the bonds, we knew that we could make it work without the Vista View property developing, but it would kind of constrain the budget for the agency for a period of 4 to 5 years. But we had all of the $3.3 million in bond projects, the errata fence, the city hall, undergrounding of power, and the development incentives for the byway. That was going to be kind of our big swing for 3 or 5 years. So all that to say, this doesn't constrict us. It just means if we want to do something else, we would either need to refinance the bonds, or we would have to secure another development where we could count on the additional tax increment revenue. Take another significant project.
Does the city foresee any big projects that they would,
For the agency to undertake,
Yeah.
not what's already been discussed, which was, certainly the Halsey Street crossings. And then also, there's some potential little things, some garbage cans,
but nothing like
other than the crossings. The crossings is the big one.
the big one?
Other than that, the agency is kind of doing, and we'll put it, but that could change if we get, let's say Vista View redevelops, and that's a $15-18 million kind of development, more resource for the agency, do more things.
And these are the projects that we just talked about that were funded with bonds. So what is proposed in the budget? We have kept this transfer to streets for the pedestrian crossings on Halsey, which was approved as part of last year's budget. We're still waiting for the county to finish their design work before we can move forward with those.
Jeff, I got a question on that. Is that going to take as long as Serrata Road? Okay.
The county's involved.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I thought this was going to be done last year. But now 2029, something like that.
Somewhere in there.
Story, we were talking with staff and someone's like, well, until they get done designing it, can't we just put up a flashing light and like paint some stripes on the cross?
That's what I was thinking too, yeah.
Like, no, that's the permanent measure that we're trying to get this
Yeah, exactly.
here. Like,
Those are rumble strips, they're illegal.
we're, and I know that John and Greg in their monthly meeting with the county are constantly pushing for.
We can laugh about it here because I don't want to cry.
Yeah.
And then also major highlights for what's included in your budget, which is in the detail that was included in the packet. The way we budgeted for property sale was we left ourselves the maximum flexibility. If by chance we buy it, turn around and sell it and want to put some development incentives in, we have enough appropriation to do kind of the maximum of what we can do. We're not anticipating that, but this gives us the most flexibility forward. So assuming that the property, we buy the property this year, sell it, we reprogram that money into outlay in case there's another opportunity that comes up, spend that money again. We don't know what that is. We're just kind of leaving it available for. And then again, just to highlight, we've tied up we've bonded against our projected tax increment revenues. Things are going to be within our operating capacity, but they'll be tight for the next 3 to 5 years to do any major projects unless there is some sort of additional development that's tied to that, or the board decides to go out for another bond. With that, those are the highlights. A lot of the details. Available for any questions that you guys might have.
Questions?
No question.
Pretty good. Mayor, Charlotte?
Well, I don't have any.
No, thank you, Sam.
Okay, looking for a motion.
I move to approve the URA budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 and recommend adoption to the board.
Second,
Okay.
we have any additional comments? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
I,
Those opposed? Motion carries. Is there a second motion in here too?
Yes, we need to get that tax money.
I move to approve the levy of 100% of the available tax increment capacity on behalf of the Wood Village Urban Renewal Agency.
Second motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Any other business?
Would you like pie before we move on to the fourth and final meeting of the evening?
Well, that's a doggone good question. I'll leave that up to the council.
We're okay here.
Do we want to wait for our first pie chart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a motion to close the meeting.
Actually, you can just close it.
I did? Okay, it's closed.
All right.
Okay, so the next up is the city's proposed budget hearing. And once again, we need to elect officers. I'll let other people make the motions. I'll just remind you of how good a job that Budget Commissioner Dirks did in our last meeting.
Actually, I'd like to nominate Mark Clark for chair of the budget meeting.
I'll second that. So all in favor? Aye. Then with the budget committee, we also need to elect a secretary. So Mark will run the meeting. The secretary will actually sign the budget.
Is there any nominations from the floor for a secretary?
I nominate Jairo Rios Campos as secretary.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a nomination. We have and a second. Is there all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any disapprovals? No. Okay, motion passes.
Yeah.
This time we'll turn over the
Easy and move on. There we go.
proposed budget to the staff.
Up now, it's Hyro's fault because his name's on it.
All right, you actually do get to hear from me now, and thank you so much, members of the council and the budget committee, for your continued time here this evening. We have a great presentation here, and as you've seen, there's actually quite a bit of change in how the budget looks this year. The intent of that is twofold. One, based on best practices, we feel it actually is easier, not just for you all to understand, but people in the community, other places to read and follow, not just the numbers, but what are the numbers doing? What are we actually doing with the community's money? And so instead of just by budget category, fund type, it's by functional type. And Seth will actually talk through a little bit that here in the next slide.
So one of the council APP items was to look at reformatting how we do our budget process, submittal for the GFOA budget award. And conceptually, the biggest change is we used to talk about the budget. You'd get 30 pages of narrative and 30 pages of tables, and it was all kind of done in one shot. And we would talk about the budget in terms of where does the money come from? Is it coming from the general fund? Is it coming from the water fund? Is it coming from the URA? In order to qualify for that award, in order to qualify for the GFOA award, and because of best practices, rather than talk to people about the pots of money that you have, talk to them about the services that you're trying to provide. And then pots of money kind of take a backseat to what are you actually doing with the money? So this was included in your packet as kind of a guide for how we've relayed out the budget document, because before, if you look at the key, it was just, we went general fund narrative, municipal building narrative, street fund, all the narratives were back to back to back. And we gave you all the tables. This time, this fall, the layout of your packet is going to follow this kind of functional chart. So what we'll do is we'll start out with the general fund, because the general fund, I highlighted on there with little yellow boxes, all of the different things that we do that are paid for out of the general fund, and it's a lot. So we'll start out with talking about the general fund and the major revenues, and then we'll go right into narrative sections and tables on public safety, public works, and administration, all the functions that kind of flow through there. And you'll also notice in your budget packet that now you're going to get, instead of having water being budget narrative, and in the middle of the tables, we're going to give you the budget narrative and then show you all the tables that are along with that, and then move on So that's kind of the major change that we made to the document and kind of one of the big things you see as you flip through it. And it also serves as a guide for how this presentation is going to go. You should follow right along with your budget packet of just flipping through, doing that. So you'll get John, Greg, and I taking different pieces of that. That's the big change. Pause here and see if there's any questions or. Right. And again, we have budgetarily and from an accounting standpoint, we have funds that have restricted revenues that we have to manage and track to make sure that we're not spending water ratepayer dollars on general fund functions without some sort of explicit authorization, because those are restricted by the state. And so we have the fund organization and we present the detail in that way, but we're talking about it in terms of functionally what we're trying to do.
It's just real quick question, and I saw this quite often. What is non-department?
Non-departmentals are catch-all category. You'll also see in here, we like to talk about the budget in terms of kind of 3 layers. We talk about in terms of operating, because that's ultimately you have to live within your means, whether that's any money we spend either has to come out of the operating margin for the current year or had to have been saved from prior years, or you're borrowing against the future. But we like to talk about operating because that's the thing that makes the most sense. Then we talk about one-time and capital. Those are kind of the one-off purchases, APP items, major projects, kind of like the one sitting in. And then there's numbers that we make up that we have to put in the budget to make sure that the state approves the budget when they look at it. Those are things like unappropriated fund balance, contingency, reserves, fund transfers, debt service, because we have an urban renewal agency and a city. We're actually showing the debt service being paid in 2 places, even though we're only giving the bank 1 check. And that's just to kind of comply with either accounting or budgetary rules. So that third tranche of numbers that kind of inflate the total number, we dump those in non-departmental so that it doesn't muck up when we try talking about events or public safety functions. So it's kind of where we put all the required numbers that don't necessarily mean much.
Numbers.
Yeah.
All right, so you're gonna hear from me actually for the first time for a while this evening. So the big one we want to highlight, all operating budgets have revenues in excess of costs. That's the big one. That's the lights on, the staff doing what we do day in, day out. The revenues we have come in exceed what it takes to keep us running. That's a positive, and that's the big one to focus on. And here in the news, not a lot of cities are in that position we are in. We are in that position, which is great. No change in total personnel, so we're still staffed at 15. I hate the term FTE, that's full-time equivalents, 15 people. You will see and kind of hear about later on that we don't have a groundskeeper right now, and actually exploring contracting that out. And you'll hear about that later in the presentation. We're actually getting a really good value in that beta test. So we have all the new costs for this building baked into the budget. We've removed all the temporary, the leasing and all that stuff with the old site. We've baked in all the new costs, which had some increases in insurance because it's a great space. We've also changed, you will see what was the city hall capital budget. We've repurposed, and that's now essentially a full sinking fund to make sure that this building is maintained in the long run. So it's going from a more or less a capital fund to a sinking fund. We've then baked into the budget our recommended capital that you'll see throughout the presentation. And then as well as the multi-year budget reserves are baked in. And that's the same, the equipment, software, backhoe, dump truck, the same things you've seen for several years now, saving up the money to replace them. So when we need to in several more years, the money is already there. And then at the end, as always, those discretionary items, both capital and one-time. And sometimes one-time has become built into the operating, which you'll see also later on. There's a couple items like the scholarships and the additional Play E support are just now baked into the budget. They're no longer a discretionary piece, but there's still those discretionary items at the end to really talk about. I'd move this out of my way. So we're going to start talking about, again, total budget. Now, this isn't operating. This is all those ending fund balances, contingencies. It's the total numbers. And you'll see the largest change here is on the municipal building fund. We finished it. So the decline is we spent the money and there was money left over, and now we're going to be using it as an accumulating fund. So it will build up back over time, but we don't need a 1.6 million.
Say that one more time, a little louder for the people in back, that we've closed out the municipal building fund and there was money left over.
Money left over, and actually have the details on that on a separate slide. Is actually quite a good chunk of money left over. Yeah, so under budget, under total budget, and I'll call it in the spirit of on time. We said summer of 22, and we technically moved in the summer of 22. And I think we actually dedicated it before official fall. So we good.
So check.
There we go. These are our projected beginning fund balances. So that's what's left in the bank account, after we essentially spent the money, what's left in our account. And again, the biggest one, municipal building fund, everything else adding except for then sewer, because we had the last payment on the additional treatment. So you'll see that's why the decline, that was the last phase of the big capital project there. So everything else is adding, accumulating as per usual, and investing where planned. So real quick, how are we doing in the current fiscal year? Certainly, COVID was still impacting a lot of operations, the first 6 months or so, but we had those ARPA funds, which allowed us to, as we talked about earlier, expand our relief programs, which are targeted to end June 30th. That's for utility payments. We've also done a couple welcome to computer programs. That's a training thing. And now, and again, you'll hear about a little bit later, talking about the rest of the ARPA funds, approximately $800,000, targeting a utility project, because that benefits everybody. If we spend the ARPA funds on a utility project, that's future rate increases that will be subverted because we have the money. We've completed this wonderful space in the Civic Center and are using it, and the community is using it. We've expanded our community outreach and engagement, not just doing more events, but we're streaming live on YouTube. We got full translation services. We're doing a lot to make sure that people have access to what we're doing. We've begun our master plan updates for both water and sewer. Also, that kicked off then the rate analysis. That'll kind of be on the back end of that, but everything's kind of moving in concert and will continue into the upcoming budget year. Building and planning, we've had we closed out the byway projects. We're getting movement at the town center. We've done a lot in terms of our zoning and development code as well. So within the budget itself, a bit less revenue, and that's on the next slide of the specific areas. Certainly motel tax, state shared revenues in some areas are a bit down, but we're going to meet our expectations. We're going to meet our needs. So on the revenues, we saw a dip certainly last year in hotel and gas tax. That is bouncing back and becoming very strong. We're seeing a lot of demand, especially in the hotels, coming back. Interest rates took a big hit and continue to take a hit. Measure 110 took a large hit out of the marijuana tax revenue proceeds. We're not going to get those back. And that's the measure that diverted marijuana tax revenues to do supportive services for addiction support. And so there was an effort at the legislative level to backfill for a year or so. That did not pass. So all cities in the state are out those revenues. And that was unplanned when we did the budget last year. Property tax, as you heard, good. Business income tax, great, because what was impacted the most were your smaller businesses. What did great were the larger ones that they pay more money. So we saw strong and continue to see strong increases in our business income tax revenues. And franchise fees they're okay. We've talked with council about some means and methods to maybe look at revising those in the coming years or periods ahead. But for this budget year, it's on par as per usual. There's a way just to get rid of that bar.
Will it go over to the side or something?
Yeah. Oh, I think I saw hide. You know what? I'm not going to mess with it now because I don't want to lose the mayor and Hardin. So anyway, these are just the proposed ending fund balances, and again, total funds here, not operating, but again, we're in really good shape, strong shape, especially in our general fund, $2.8 million. That's a good spot to be in. Sewer continues to be kind of our weaker area. But again, through the master plan process, the rate analysis, we hope to do some corrective measures in truing that up. And it all happens because of these 14 dedicated professionals through Public Works on the field staff, those here in the office, answering the phones, greeting customers and guests in person. We all make it happen, and it's our strongest asset. So we always support them. So as I said earlier, no positions are going to be added or subtracted. Our COLA increase, cost of living, is going to be 4%. And you're seeing, here on the graph on the right, we had this dip. We had a lot of people retire. So we already bring on new people at a lower rate. And now you're seeing that climb as it progressed through their step progress, as they're gaining more skills and been with our organization longer. So the bulk of our people are in step progression. So we will continue to see kind of this little steeper curve, but that was planned and projected because we had that decline, brought people in lower, and now they're catching back up. And one thing that was always baked into our budget is, again, training and support for this team to make sure that they have all their certificates required, that they have opportunities for educational reimbursement for additional skills, knowledge, and abilities. We have our re-engineering program and award that now that, again, we've moved, COVID hopefully is behind us for the long term. We can, again, start getting back to how we do what we do and how we can do that even more effectively and efficiently, and reward those who come up with those creative projects and ideas. There's been a few transitions. One, we have someone out on family leave right now. She had actually we had kind of two. Our finance director had a baby girl back in the
Yay.
I think Thanksgiving, but yeah.
I remember.
That's a good
Some working from home, some kind of covers there, and then our front desk person is out. She had a baby girl a month ago. Good, yeah, about.
We're outnumbering you guys. Yay.
And luckily, we're bringing back Karen part-time back under contract to cover that front
Love
position.
Karen.
So plug and play person. It's been great for her, really great for us. And as I talked about for groundskeeper, hard one to fill. Nonprofit right now to take care of park stuff and right-of-way stuff. So still working through that. And again, we'll touch on it a little more detail later. Don't want to steal John's thunder, but it's an effective team. We do a lot with the resources given, and we try to provide maximum value back to the community. So with that, you can say we have another 10, 12, 15 through contract, whether it's through police, fire, building services, or planning. As Seth talked about, inflation, 7.5%, still increasing, but our COLA is capped at 4%. And so while that's on the one hand good for budget control, at some point you have to make up that difference. And so as explained, in the upcoming year, we're doing a full wage analysis and just seeing how the wages are comparing, especially with this rapid inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. Medical insurance continues to grow, but we've planned for that and have the money to cover that. So we have those, as I explained, the merit-based compensation, those going through the steps, we've budgeted for that. And then, PERS continues to escalate in costs, but thankfully for the investment a year ago and that side account investment actually bought down the rate we're seeing. And you'll see later another proposal to put another chunk of investment in to buy the rate down even further with the higher rate of interest. And again, Seth is going to talk in detail with that. In total, salaries increased $62,000, or about 5.16%, which is generally what we'd expect for a bulk of a team going through a step progression. So in terms of personnel's total percent of operations, it's about 37%. We did get the question earlier, what does that look like if you're to include all those kind of contract stuff? Yeah, roughly 55-ish%. It's hard to say. We get one amount. We don't know what part goes to overhead and what part may go to material services, supplies, et cetera, versus just what's straight personnel. But we figure if you do that, it'd be about 50%, 55%. But for the people we control directly, 37%. Materials and supplies, that's the stuff we're doing. And then we have our indirect costs. And then talking about capital outlay that you'll see in the budget. So the first one here, we're actually transferring, we have Parks SDC revenues, and we're going to transfer those out of the Parks SDC fund to potentially take on an eligible project. We don't have one in mind. There are no essentially opportunities we're looking at. We have some ideas. What we've seen lately are grants require 100% designs. Basically, they want a shovel-ready project. So an idea would be to actually start doing some design work for some of the projects we've talked about, such as skate park, futsal court. But we would work those through the Parks Committee, take it back to council. But it's the resources there if that's a project we want to take on. It is our year for the large CDBG project. That's a community development block grant, and it's for park upgrades. We're looking at new and improved picnic benches and tables, ADA accessible, larger for large families, more of them, adding barbecue stations in targeted areas, and also looking at the multi-use field, doing some enhancements to the baseball side, and actually taking down the old backstop and making it more amenable to like soccer or other open field sports. We're continuing with the signage in the parks and making sure that anyone can read them, that they're accessible to everybody, understanding, we'll call it the park expectations as well as the amenities. We've also, we budget a little bit additional from Monroe County service enhancements, $25,000 a year. That's $75,000. Actually, we just roll that into the Halsey Street crossings, since that's a Multnomah County road. I figure that's a good enhancement. And you'll see the $700,000 there is a combination of that urban renewal funds we talked about, as well as the ODOT grant that we did receive. And then the crack and slurry seal for $100,000. Yes.
That ODOT grant, is that?
Yes, it does. It's
I believe it's the end of.
that's what I thought. Yeah, December 31st, 2022.
We hope to see the design soon. Again, as soon as we get that design, we'll go out with an RFP. We'll manage that and we'll.
Yeah, we already,
Get it
We'll
before
get
the
it
end of
going.
October.
Yeah.
the
I hope
only
so.
the only thing we're missing from the RFP is the design itself. So the day we get it and they're like, yes, this is what we want, we'll send it. We're also doing another round of smart meters. These are what basically you can read remotely. Drive by remotely. So it's not, we don't hit a button here and get it, it's remote. So you drive by, we use it in targeted areas where the meters are spread far apart. So the crew just has to drive by and it picks up all the meters instead of individually walking, what could be 500 yards between meters, or drive here, drive there. They drive through it, such as the town center, the byway, Tree Hill, etc. New and improved valve exerciser, the one we have, less than optimal. So we're upgrading. So we make sure that all the valves in our water system are tracked and monitored appropriately to make sure that they're continuing to function. We're continuing the master plan updates and rate methodology. Again, that's in the current year. We knew it was going to extend into the upcoming budget year. So we're continuing that funding to finish those out. We're also going to inspect and clean all of our sewer systems this year. It's been just over 5 years. I think this will be year 6, and it's best practice to about between 5 and 7 years. So we're right at that sweet spot to get them cleaned, inspected, reduce the amount of fatbergs. Want to touch on SCADA improvements. I know you've all seen this many years, and it keeps coming back. We are in the process now of actually looking at a complete overhaul with a different provider. That will give us the functionality we're looking for, both internally, resiliency. I'm going to call it the bus test. If our current main person that helps us now with it was hit by a bus, we would have a hard time, with our SCADA system. So we're looking at repackaging that whole. Just can come in to assist us. They'll know what the system components are, how it works, how it functions. So yeah, we are moving in that direction, and we will get this done. We've already met with the provider, and they're putting together estimates for us right now. Then we have all of our reserves for the accounting software, backhoe, dump truck. And you see all the totals running there at the bottom. Questions just kind of on total funds or the recommended capital at this time before you start digging into the
And
operating.
what the breakdown was you saw a department at the top and then a dollar value. That's how much each one of those departments is contributing.
And you see it is broken up to general fund versus then street, water, sewer, and then the total. I'm going to turn it back over to Seth to hit on the operations side.
All right, so as we said at the start, we're gonna hit the general fund because it covers a lot of stuff. So we'll take a look at revenues and expenditures. Stop me at any point if you have a question.
Actually, I have a quick question and I
Right
apologize.
off the bat, I love
Right
it.
off the bat.
So eager.
And, so I know the recreation portion comes out of the general. Doing a separate conflict of interest?
Yes.
For that?
Yes.
On the back of your agenda underneath, when it comes time to make the motions, there's a motion 1A that approves the budget excluding recreation services, and then a motion that approves it just the recreation services. So that would be the point in time to declare that.
Appreciate it.
And there is a separate slide just on recreation. So if anyone but you has questions on it, that's the time to ask those questions. Or I suppose if there's questions about the program, the manager's right there.
Only information.
Content.
So we'll start off with taking a look at the general fund revenues. This is a look both at the operating and the total. So operating revenues are up. Last year we had projected a drop, but this year they're up. We have some good returns on the business income tax and property tax, but you see here where the Multnomah or the Measure 110 impacted our marijuana revenues through the state shared. Total revenues increased 1.7%. And then when you get to the total, the biggest difference is the beginning fund balance. You bring in grants and then you get transfers in. And that big jump in transfers in is the money that's coming from the URA for the debt service, which is then going out, and only the names are changed. No money actually lands in the general. Here you can kind of take a look at how our revenue base is mixed up. On the left is just the operating revenues, property taxes, business income taxes, franchise fees, and then you get into your state shared revenues and motel taxes are the big drivers of what allows us to fund our operations. Then on the total resources, you can see where the beginning fund balance comes in, and we're carrying a healthy beginning fund balance as well as some transfers in and grants. We talked a lot about property tax in the urban renewal presentation. Here's a summary of what was certified for 2021 and then what we're projecting. We did drop the cap a little bit because about 10% of our area is within the urban renewal boundaries. This is the requirements, and we're taking a look at this holistically so we can talk about the operating, but each of these will be covered individually within the section. So the short of it is that our net operating margin is still positive. We have enough money to cover, but our expenditures are growing faster than our operating revenues, and that is for many years. Before you get too concerned about that, this is a budgetary number, and I want to stress that we always budget a little bit low on our resources and a little bit high on our requirements so that we don't have to come back and ask for more money. We hope we have enough money to cover it and we spend a little bit less than what we were planning.
What happened to this? You sent me a whole bunch. I can't find it.
And this is just kind of another way of looking at kind of what we spend the money on. And as is the case and has been the case, public safety is the big expenditure out of the general fund. We spend over $1.1 million of that operating goes to public safety. The rest is, I won't say small, but in comparison, it's small. And then this just shows that this is just the operating, and this brings in our contingencies, unappropriate ending, and transfers out. Again, those tranches where we look at operating, and then we look at capital, and then we look at all the budgetary numbers for moving money around and funds that we're sitting on for future investment in the community. General fund capital, this is just the slice out of that big one that affects the general fund. And you'll see this rubric, anything that's new is highlighted in green, anything that we're carrying over from the prior year is highlighted in yellow. So we're planning on doing our tree planting in right of ways. Going to take another round at the sports field restoration, which I heard was very popular at our Easter egg drive-through. There's some parking issues with all the people who were coming to play soccer on Saturday morning, which is not a problem. It's a good problem. So
Yeah, you weren't there.
you're welcome. Soccer game, just not the one that was hosted here.
So is that one treatment in the fall and then another treatment in the spring again?
Correct. Same round of treatment.
Okay, thank you.
And there are some discretionary, and we'll cover these at the end in more detail, but we wanted to show that there's going to be about $164,000 for discretionary capital or operating. And then this is kind of the summary for the overall general fund health. The big difference is that one-time revenue. We had some ARPA money come in. So that was about $800,000. And then the savings from the municipal building project was $300,000 to $400,000 coming back to the general fund. We're anticipating. We plan.
And once again, that's something that needs to be heralded.
We're still trying to make sure that we have gone through and done the accounting on their final billing. They had some software transition. They had a project manager that was hospitalized for a while. So we haven't quite gotten that nailed down, but it's going to be in that range.
What roughly percentage?
So we spent the CMGC was $6 million in total for their final billings, just under 6.1.
Yeah, it was
So that'd be about 5%.
About 5% that,
yeah, because it was
That's a big
6 million, I think 47,000 is the CMGC total.
so 5% ending fund from that capital project.
Yeah,
is a good
and
number.
when you throw in the soft costs like we direct purchase the equipment, the dais,
Yeah.
the computer back office stuff. The total project gets up to, I think, 7.4. So it's a little bit more, but if you do it as a percentage of the CMGC.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And as always, we bring you a balanced budget. We're not trying to spend more money than we have. And with that, so this is the part where it's going to change. We're going to present this kind of in that order that we said. We're going to take a look at public safety, go through all of the slides for public safety. Then John's going to take over for public works, and then we'll hit administration and all the back office functions.
I had another quick question. I always wait till then just because it's always for community events, are we, just kind of looking at how cost has skyrocketed and things like
Yes,
Is
Em
there
kept
been-
mentioning inflation when she proposed her budget. Trust me.
And I mean, I just say that because as a city, we've been prideful in what we do, what we offer and how we serve our. So I think it's appropriate that we keep that in mind, just looking at everybody else's, also struggle. So, some things that maybe the city would have got like in-kind donations before aren't happening as much now. And so.
And
looking
we've
at
planned that
cover
in the
those
budget
costs.
that because in the past, maybe someone donates, food stuff, whether for night out or for holidays, we have budgeted that we have to buy it all. Now, so that means if someone donates it, great. That's either money we could put towards a different event or it goes back to the ending fund balance at the end of the year. But yes, we/M took a hard look at what do we want to do with our events and what would that take to do it, understanding that food costs especially are one of the larger triggers in terms of escalating costs lately.
So public safety, we have one slide because we contract out all of our services.
I was wondering how long that was gonna be.
The built-in assumptions are that Multnomah County Sheriff's Office contract will go up 3%. We have not confirmed that, but that's been historically what they've asked for. It's actually last year, I think they asked for just under 2%. Buffer in there. Fire, the contract that we have with Gresham Fire Department runs for another 3 or 4 years, and it's capped at 4.5%. And BOAC through our activities with the user board. We're projecting 4.5% if they get all of their ad packages past their council. So in total, the budget is increasing. Last year we had a one-time funding for some potential look at the Safer Fire Initiative, but that ended up not getting spent. So we programmed that for this year.
Seth, I do have one request that next year, just from a purely alphabetical standpoint, fire be above police.
Yeah.
And we
Purely alphabetical.
had
But,
put Bureau of Emergency Communications at the top, but we will,
They can, 911 numbers go down below.
yeah.
I will redo that.
And yeah, I was at an event last night where I had an opportunity to speak with both Under Sheriff Nicole Morrissey and our current sheriff as well. And, I thank them, in the assumption that the increase would be 3% again, just because, we all saw what cost of living actually went up and, at the 7%. And of course, we're happy that we have a cap on our union contracts at the 4%. And, so clearly, a 3% increase that they're passing on to us probably isn't even increasing, or matching their increase in costs. So, if you get a chance to thank them, you should take that opportunity as well.
All right, thank you, Mayor. We'll continue with Public Works. So like Greg and Seth have been saying, they did a great job putting this together. Our team's 14 staff members. Public Works is 8, but it takes the entire team of 14 to make things happen, from the utility billing to processing invoices and collecting the monies. The staff, they do a great job. We ask them to wear a lot of different hats, which they do. And so instead of talking about each number on these slides, I'm going to go through what Public Works, what we maintain, whether it's streets, water, sewer, parks, buildings. There's pie charts. Yes, there's lots of numbers on here. Had my opportunity to talk about Public Works, and I would go through each line item number by number, and folks their eyes would just kind of glaze over. So we'll get started here.
Know your audience.
That's right. System Development Charge Fund.
You're gonna have to click the screen since you touched the little bar. You got to click the screen. And
There we go. Right, this bar does get in the way.
Yeah, there's no good spot.
Yeah, so utilities. Here we go. Better screen here so I don't forget. So again, this goes through water, sewer, like Seth said, each fund. We're going to go through that: water, sewer, streets, parks. And here's your parks. Go ahead and stop me if at any time if you want clarifications or anything. So this is Donald Robertson Park, and don't forget about our 4.6 acre wetland park that we have.
When I looked at this chart before the meeting, John, personnel services for parks, is that our contract or is that some of our individual employees?
That is the Public Works percentage.
So since we're kind of in the midst of a pilot project with Cultivate Initiatives, what we did was since this is all budgeted underneath operations, we left the salary and benefits as is in the budget, as it has historically been. And we told John, if we get a contract, it has to be less than that. So,
yeah. So this is not personnel. I mean, payroll.
It is budgeted that way, but we know that we might choose not to fill it. But
Okay.
we don't know how the pilot's going to go.
That's how we're funding Cultivate Initiatives at this point.
Okay, there's my question. That's where we're funding it.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Ballparkish, John, how does the Cultivate Initiatives pilot pencil out with our groundskeeper position?
It pencils
Cost-wise.
out real well.
Okay,
A smile.
Again, we're 3 weeks in.
absolutely.
Greg and I are still having meetings with their leadership over there. And as they are bringing on staff members to enhance their services, one of them is providing estimates and the billing part of it. So.
And again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, so to speak. But as we're moving forward with Cultivate initiatives, are they also building in a kind of a training component, or are we providing some of that training component as into, safety, and maybe even grow the skill level that people can take care of a park?
I would say yes to that.
Okay.
And that has began already
Yeah.
with training on tractors, tractor mowers and different zero turn mowers, the training on that, the PPEs that are required to operate that type of equipment.
And it's also, I'll call it both customer service in terms of a customer they're directly serving, so us as an entity, but also people out in the community. We've received compliments not only on how, like Halsey Street looks or the park looks, but how the people, the Cultivate Initiatives team members are interacting with the public, very friendly, personable. And it's also, I'll call it workforce skills training for them, in that things you do, things maybe you don't do when you're kind of quote unquote on the clock at a place. So it helps them build their own skills, whether it's, I'll call it the office types where they're doing the estimates to contracting, or the folks in the field learning how to be a groundskeeper.
Yeah, it's, and that's really great. And I know that we've talked about it that way, but this, while it's cheaper, we want them trained and as a workforce development. And I appreciate hearing what we're doing for that.
Do we have being on the budget side, what is Cultivate? And
It's a nonprofit organization and they are through Multnomah County.
So it's not through Multnomah County, they're their own entity, a nonprofit, and they do both I'll call it homeless services as a direct provider doing sheltering. They also do workforce development training, and that's through what we contract with called their beautification team. And so they hire mostly either homeless individuals or previously homeless individuals to gain them skills, work experience. They get paid, I believe it's $20 an hour plus benefits. So they can grow their skills, be part of something bigger. They are, Multnomah County contracts with them for a lot of their services, both on the beautification team. Contracts with them for the beautification team, as well as then as a shelter provider. They will run and operate call it short-term shelters, like emergency shelters, as well as call it more permanent sheltering, waiting to get into more permanent housing. They've been around actually for quite a number of years, and I think we kind of met with them accidentally, I'll call it, but it turned out to be a great accident in that we're helping them grow their mission, and they're helping us maintain our parks and rights of ways in a way that meets our standards.
oh, good. Sounds good.
That they're supporting us. They're supporting us with right-of-way maintenance.
Oh, Upperata and Woodville.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And Halsey, I mean, that's where
And Halsey too.
along Halsey, people calling saying, are you going to charge me for this? And we're like, no. And they're like, well, thank you. Because now I can maintain it. I feel like it's in a place where I know what to do to keep it looking nice. Because for some people, it was just a heavy lift with the brambles and everything else.
Good questions. Good question. And moving on. So we went through the park system development charges. Some of the park capital, like Greg and Seth mentioned, CDBG, we are applying for our round this year for a grant to do some enhanced amenities at Donald Robinson Park, barbecues, barbecue pits, additional picnic tables, and then also do the second phase or second year of fall and spring field enhancements. So that's going to continue. And then park signage. So in all these projects, we'll update the Parks Commission as these projects happen and as we reach out to them for their recommendations on park signage. Building services, it's really, it's a net zero. Money in, money out. And all the money that state regulations restrict spending any building funds elsewhere. It all has to stay within the building fund.
Sorry.
Last couple of years, council, as I do my Public Works Director's report, all the inspections, permits has increased. We hope, things might slow down a little bit. But as commercial businesses come on board at the town center, and we go through the planning and design review, and hopefully we get some of those developed. Again, if you have any questions.
And again, the same question, the personnel services, is that what we're paying Gresham? Their fees for their, on the permits and that, or what is that number?
Yes, and that is also our permit.
So most of our permit tech is budgeted here, I think about 70% of Erica's time. And then a portion of Jonathan, the Public Works Coordinator. The Gresham payments are made out of materials and services. And so,
That's materials and services.
yeah, because
Okay.
that's a check we cut to someone who's not our employee.
Thank you.
Recent storm. So one thing too, I wanted to let everyone know, we're not in the red, whether it's street fund, gas tax revenue, we're not in the red. So whether it's street fund, parks, water, building, sewer, we are not in the red. Greg and Seth conveyed that earlier. Streets, everything from, a pothole in the road, shoulder maintenance, storm is also included in streets. That includes contract services for street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, our storm vault on Cedar Lane, which gets cleaned annually. Here's the street fund here. As Greg and Seth conveyed earlier, the operating monies is 1.5 million for streets. We maintain about just over 5 miles of roadway, and we also provide investments to secure our quality of roads, and our pavement condition is just below 80, which is very good. So maintaining that annual investment is a good thing. And so that support is appreciated.
So John, and this may be outside of the scope of the budget part of this, but what streets do you have planned for this year? Or is that something further into the?
Yeah, so what we do, we use Street Saver. It's an
Yes.
engineered service. And we will go through and make that determination.
Okay.
But right now, we're looking, the original village is in pretty good shape. So we're looking at maybe off Arata and into the upper village.
Like 236, 237, those well-traveled roads, that's what we've penciled in right now.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And the footpaths and walking paths, those are also included in streets. But here's a couple pie charts.
Love pie.
More
Yep.
pie. Does that mean we can get pie while you're talking?
Wonder.
You're the chair.
You're the chair. You can make a motion.
Recess.
Well, the mayor said no, but
The mayor has his pie. He doesn't have to get up.
oh, does he? Is that why he said no pie for us?
Go get a piece of pie.
Okay.
No, you can have pie anytime you want. I said
You wanna
Charlotte and
take
I
a
were
break?
gonna eat our
Or do you
pie
want-
here because,
I would like to get a,
We finished streets.
okay, we'll finish streets.
I
Okay, John.
want to be off
Yeah,
camera
I'm all in
before
favor of
anybody
that.
sees me eat the whole thing.
Good.
Okay,
All right.
yes.
So this goes through the revenues and the total resources in the fund. Here's your street fund. It kind of breaks down the from the pie chart, it kind of just puts it in perspective.
What are the red stars?
Hmm,
Those are,
I don't know.
You're not on a microphone, so the mayor's not hearing this.
Yeah, Charlotte really wants to know what the red stars are too.
Yeah.
So the red stars are the categories that end up making it into the appropriation ordinance that we end up adopting at the with the council. So all this is saying is that the reserves and the unappropriated fund balance, those are numbers, but we can't actually spend those.
We can or cannot.
Cannot without, you can spend those, but that it would require an additional public hearing in order to do.
Okay.
It's one of those things because we talk about for budget language, the state talks about appropriation. And all that means is that the things that are starred in red are things that they consider appropriation. We call it, look at it in terms of total requirements. Sometimes that terminology is a little confusing. So this slide has split out so we can talk about operating expenses, we can talk about total requirements, and we can talk about appropriations.
So
Thank you.
basically, if it's not starred, it goes into a savings account that we cannot touch unless we have another hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, continue,
Right,
John.
No, so through personnel services, materials and services, that's where the contracts for street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, any kind of jet rotting of storm lines, that's where that materials and services. So you have your operating expenses. And again, your operating expenses and your total street fund for 22-23.
So you have a minus 3.43 then.
The net operating margin declined because the operating expenditures grew a little bit faster than the operating revenues. We're still in the black, but it's
Right.
less
Not in the
black.
red.
Okay. Are you ready for a question? Okay.
Fire away.
One of the things that when we put together the street utility fee is that we would ask the county if we offered them a little incentive to take care of their streets, and we contributed to them to do so, we would be put up into a higher priority for them to take care of their streets around Wood Village. And since the pandemic, we have not seen any of that happen. So you talk about dodging potholes everywhere around and now no longer through Wood Village because they've really done a bang up job with Arata Road. But Gleason, however you want to pronounce it, depending on if you're listening to Google or what have you, it's just terrible. And then Wood Village Boulevard itself is starting to alligate
And
like crazy.
If you take the last 5 years of county investments, most of them have been within our city limits.
That's true too.
So.
And where did they get that money though?
Again, now the $25,000 that we put aside here, we still have that, and you'll see that in your budget. I think Seth had it earlier. There is a line item. We're actually put that money towards the Wood Village Boulevard, the possible crosswalks there.
Oh, I wasn't familiar with that.
Yeah, we had it down at 75,000, and that's where that money's is going.
Is there?
And I think in the past, because they didn't use any of it, we went ahead and took some of it back. Didn't we spend what we had accrued at the time to help with some of the cost overruns on Cedar Lane?
That is correct. And, Gleason specifically, we have talked with the county about that, and I'll call it's multifold, Gleason. One, half of it is City of Gresham, half of it is Multnomah County. Ideally, you want to pair both entities working together as one, project. It is not on the county's in the next couple of years capital plan to overlay, partly because they need to reconstruct every single curb ramp to be in compliance with updated ADA standards. And again, the county in their next round of funding for ADA ramps, Gleason is not on that list. They're targeting more, I'll call it pedestrian oriented areas around the region.
I see that. That's why I'm complaining about just the potholes. I guess I could just, start my own campaign of calling them constantly to bug them about filling the potholes.
And we've done that, and we've ended up having to use, our crew,
staff.
our materials to fill potholes, especially like on Halsey Street. We feel it's just a service level to the community. And we are tracking that kind of strategically, as well as the maintenance along ways to show them I'll call it the level of partnership and investment we're putting into, I'll call it the transportation system as a whole, and where that gap is.
So yeah, I mean, we could advocate for that, but like Greg said, they have to collaborate. There has to be a collaboration between Multnomah County and City of Gresham. It would look foolish to have one entity grind and overlay half of the road and the other.
Not saying that may not happen.
Right, but
unfortunately, it's our side, our city side, that's the worst of the two.
right. But again, the investments the last 5 years that the county
Right. Okay.
have been predominantly in Woodville in their defense.
Thank you, John.
Well, and I think that we're spending it the right way this time, the way it's proposed to go into the crosswalks. I think in the future, either we just don't do it anymore, or put it into streets and let it aggregate, for our projects and our yearly maintenance, because historically it hasn't bought us that that sort of favored status that we hoped it would buy us. And then, also, I mean, it's not just budget that why county roads don't get taken care of. It seems like nobody works there anymore either. And so, I can't imagine that the level of service that we get from them in East County or in our city is going to increase dramatically at any time in the next few years.
Thank you, Mayor.
So as you can see, personnel is the biggest part of street fund operating. Then you have your materials and supplies and your indirect expenses. Capital outlay for streets and street planting. You have your slurry seal and crack seal. As a placeholder, you have 236th and 237th. Multnomah County enhancements, $75,000. Halsey street crossings, $700,000. And as you can see, that was a carryover. So we're anticipating on getting those built after July 1. And then future reserves, as Seth and Greg talked about, you have software, backhoe, and dump truck. You don't want to get a one-time bill for a backhoe for, $125,000. You want to have something in reserves to offset that. And same thing with dump truck. That could be a big hit to a budget. So if you're investing in that, you're putting away, it's not as hard of a hit. Excuse me?
A right thing to do.
Yeah.
Want to take a break?
Yes.
Okay.
We brought out
Time for
more
pie.
plates and everything else, so help yourself.
You want a piece of your pie?
You're gonna have a piece? Taking a break?
Yeah.
a look of satisfaction.
Well, the one time there were so many pie charts, you all actually stopped the meeting and said, get us pie. Gotta stop. No, I remember that meeting. It was get us pie.
15th.
Started that.
No, that's because.
Gonna go through the trouble of like. Now that we're back, it's like. And I know, it's like now we.
And we in a sugar coma.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Well, at least it's in the realm.
But unfortunately, we got a couple extras in case you want.
Oh.
I'll swap.
Now you're going too.
But she's
Now you're going too far.
Em was telling me we didn't even need to.
That's what I was assuming, just kind of, graze on it during the whole budget time. Part of the deal too. Yeah, we'll prove this.
Yeah.
Does it mean it's nap time now? Not just a hat rack.
Don't threaten me with a good time having a nap. I could. Doesn't take much and I can just kind of dip off and be out.
Yeah, we got.
Mhm.
Dishwasher. Council let us buy 2 of them.
Is that what you ordered?
No, it was
They
one, that
really
had- it was a no-name pie.
I have.
What was it?
Yeah,
You really?
Coconut cream.
yeah, but it is.
Serves as a
I
second
couldn't tell
one.
what it was.
Mhm.
Refrigerators, I was like, we have 2 dishwashers?
It's better for,
Chores.
Is that-
like Tuesday. Cause Wednesday's garbage, so she has to get all the garbage out.
Yeah, but that's not free labor. You pay for that.
Byron too.
Yeah.
Pay for lot.
Sometimes. More than what I get.
Oh, not again.
She's like, I'm like Tuesday, your favorite.
Like Tuesday every other.
I know. Better hurry up then. Better hurry up.
Can we roll, mister?
Yeah, I was just waiting for Byron to come back and then
Oh,
Seth.
I think he's
Seth
back.
is back. So
Well, I'm gonna get up and go to the bathroom.
do you want to go now or
No,
no?
no,
Okay, go ahead. And John, we're ready to continue.
start the meeting.
Start moving on water. Mayor, are you back on?
Hello, Mayor.
There you go.
Knock, knock.
Hey, he took his break.
Still on the maybe just having a mute issue or just stepped out really quick.
Would you like me to continue?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sure he's looked this over 100 times.
Stepped away.
Is he back now?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, you can see him if he was back, huh?
If he was back.
Okay, you don't mind waiting, do you, everyone? Till he's back on the air, till we see him?
I'm back.
How do you, okay, well, you want to give him a couple of minutes anyway?
I'm back.
Oh, there it is. Let's give him a big hand.
We're put,
Thanks. It's the first time anybody's ever clapped that I went pee.
Well, yes,
all
John.
right, we were going to continue, Mayor, and move on to water.
Thank you.
Okay. So the water fund has the largest operating fund, which is $2.6 million. So everything from our SCADA, which incorporates not just water, but sewer also, everything from generator testing, exercising valves, exercising fire hydrants, flushing our system, really just conveying healthy drinking water to our community. And our staff, you can see some of the pictures here from water sampling to exercising valves. Fund here. Like I said, it's the largest operating fund, which is just over $2.6 million. Here's a breakdown of revenues. As you can see, it's, selling water and to our community. That's the largest revenue there. Breakdown. Expenses and budget with the contingencies, and again, change from last year. Questions? Operations, you can see, again, personnel is going to be our largest expense. And again, all our operators have to be certified and continued training CEUs throughout the years.
So you see a reduction possibility of 20%, huh?
Sorry, I turned my microphone off. Built in, we got hit. They're requiring a lot more sampling and testing, as well as all of the chemicals that we use have seen dramatic increases in the cost for the chlorine.
The chlorine, CL.
Yeah, well, those are going up. So why is this going down?
So that means our operating requirements are going up faster. You see there that our operating requirements went up almost 64,000, but our operating revenues only went up 24. So we're still in the black, but our operating margin has shrunk.
Decreased.
And that's that -30 or the -29,000 is that that's gone down since the prior year.
Okay.
Water capital, like Greg said, we're going to be making some investments to our SCADA, our smart meters, which is our radio read meters for efficiencies, tree planting, which is going through crossing all the funds, future system capital, and SDC and utility rate model, and master plan, which is rolling over from this year's budget. You don't see we're not going to see a large capital budget in water or sewer because we are waiting for the completion of the master plans and the SDC and rate model project. So once we get that, then I think in the near future, I'd say 1 to 3 years, you're going to see larger investments with capital for water and sewer.
So John, are you moving away from touch read to smart meters now?
In strategic areas, yes. We
On
are.
those hard to read or
No,
the
not
strategic areas?
I had to process what you were saying. Sorry. Because you said your street,
No,
Shamrock?
I said you said strategic, so I was trying to understand what you meant by strategic.
Clusters, or if traffic is an issue, like on Halsey, you know, the higher volume traffic, 238th, you know, safety issue for our staff.
Right.
They're clustered and you just drive through, 5 minutes, you have your read.
Right, because I've seen a lot of those meters are in the parking lot, for example. That's what you're talking
And
about. And
that's-
people park on top of
Those
them.
are already radio reads, but
Right.
we're putting others throughout the city.
Okay, good.
Tree Hill's one of them, Tree Hill and Cottonwood.
Yeah, Sandy
Okay.
Boulevard, I think we have some where they're spread out. And so instead of stopping parking reading is you just drive through and it picks them all
Picks
up.
them up.
Is it eventually, though, the idea is to go all radio?
Continue going in that direction.
Yeah,
Each
no, I
year,
like it is what I'm
incremental
getting at.
investments. Yes.
I like it.
Then just to tag on to that, John, as we have new developments, are we putting in the new smart meters in those developments, say as by the byways when
You'll read.
radio?
Yes.
read? Okay.
Yep.
Right, okay. I love it.
Moving on to sewer. Sewers, almost right up there with water, but the operating budget is $2.1 million, as Greg and Seth spoke about earlier. Again, it has SCADA, and then you have, you know, your grounds maintenance and your building maintenance, annual generator maintenance. One thing you don't want is power to go down and you not be able to pump sewer. So we do have backup generators in our water system and our sewer system. So sewer, you always want redundancy.
Redundancy.
Yes, you don't want DEQ knocking on your door.
No,
This goes through the sewer fund here. Again, sewer and water are two biggest operating budgets that we have.
questions? Okay.
More pie chart, pie graph. There you go. Have a bite of pie.
Okay.
And again, same thing, you know, the more water you use, the more sewer you're going to generate. Here, change from last year, your sewer fund total. Questions there? Materials and services, we do contract out a lot of services for Vector truck services.
Treatment.
Treatment with City of Gresham, which is
And we've.
this coming up year will be our last year for the additional 50,000
May,
50,000 what?
capacity.
Oh, thank you.
so
Okay.
in 2019, we signed an amendment and it had a 3-year payback in this May 1st. So we're only 2 weeks away from making our last payment for getting that additional. We increased our capacity about 14%
Right.
over what we had.
And that was enough to accommodate the build out we had with the, you know, Riverwood, the Byway, et cetera, and leave a good margin for some new development because we'll be at what, low 80% of our capacity.
Correct. And so again, same as water, sewer, you won't see a huge capital investment as far as projects because we are waiting for the master plan to get completed along with the SDC and rate study. So that's why, like I said, this coming up year, 22, 23, you're not going to see a huge capital investment, big major projects, for water and sewer.
Can I add one quick thing, John?
Sure.
Just in terms of the master plan and the due diligence to doing, especially with sewer, is unlike the last update, 10 years ago, they did measurements during rain events to try to gauge the amount of I&I that may be in the system.
Yes.
So it's really going to give us a great look at what's in our system and to target those future potential improvements, whether it's for expansion or fixing deficiencies in the pipe. So it should be a really great master plan update.
Okay, so that master plan is for both water and sewer.
Correct.
We have, two separate master
Okay,
plans.
good deal.
So, and you'll see, we did not want to rush the firm that we awarded the contract to for both water and sewer. We would rather have roll it over mental budget and roll it over into this year's budget to get a good product. Like Greg said, the last sewer master plan update was less than optimal. Let's just say it. So we really want this is the future of our water and sewer. And
Okay, Charlotte, do you have anything you'd like to add or a question?
No, I'm good, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
and then here's your operating expenses. Again, materials and supplies, we're paying for the treatment. That's where the majority of the cost is. Sewer capital, again, tree planting, it goes across all funds. You have some SCADA improvements, and I discussed the master plan and SDC utility rate model. Those are being rolled over from this year to next year. And then sewer, the closed caption TV. So basically, folks that don't know what that is basically you are cameraing your entire system. So.
And they have to clean it before they run a camera in, so it's a cleaning and essentially a full inspection of the system.
So, I mean, what that is, that shows what assets you have under the ground and where they are located and what kind of condition they're in. So. Any questions on the capital? Like I said, the water and sewer is pretty small this upcoming year. Nothing, moving on. That is it for Public Works.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Good.
So the last area we'll cover, kind of the thing about how we were, what it is we do. We really provide two direct services. We provide public safety and public works. Everything else supports those service delivery, whether that's administration, finance, city recorder, human resources, internet, IT, auditing, city attorney, even our city events. All of that is really to drive service delivery to the citizens. So these are support services that enable John and our partners at the Sheriff's Office, Gresham Fire, and the Bureau of Emergency Communications to provide direct services to our citizens. So start out administration and finance. This is in the general fund. It covers portions of the administrative staff salary. We added, included in the as a kind of a continuing service level is the scholarship program and playee support. And that's reflected as an operating cost rather than as a one-time or discretionary.
And the playee support is in addition to the contracted amount with the IJ with the city of Fairview. So this is above and beyond that amount to aid in specific targeted programs that the council wants to support through Play East.
Yeah. Our events, or as we are rebranding, community outreach and engagement. This covers all of our annual events, including the newer ones, and Food Fest Friday. We tried to come up with a fourth F, but couldn't brainstorm with one. So that's a new event to help bring people into this space.
About fantastic. Fantastic Food Fest Friday.
And that's going to be in August Is it what, Friday Family Fun Night Festival?
Yes.
Fun, yeah.
Movie night.
There's also a public
Friday, family
administration
fun
is
deals.
included in administration, and this covers building maintenance, ground maintenance, and portion of the salaries that aren't allocated directly to the utilities. And this is also where we budget some reserves and one-time expenses in the general fund. Our recreation services, we contract with Play East in a joint partnership with the city of Fairview. We're in year 3 of a 3-year agreement, and the amount for 22-23 is set by that contract. I tried to include as many bright shining faces as I could on one screen.
Hey, those pictures look familiar.
Contract covers copyright infringement. And then non-departmental, this is all of the stuff that, this is all of the internal service funds that get charged to the general fund. The capital, it's the reserves. We also have transfers out. So at the end of this year, we'll have about $800,000 left in our ARPA funding. We've budgeted as a placeholder, 400 of that to go to water, 400 to sewer. We might end up making an adjustment based on the master plan work as it's completed. But that at least gives us some starting appropriation if a project's identified that we want to get cranking on. Then this is also where we put the debt service for those full faith and credit bonds, as well as our fund balance. And so we talked about the internal service fund. This is going to be an actual appropriated fund based on the supplemental budget. We did talk about getting reshoots done of the glamour shots for the counselors. I wanted to do it ahead of the budget meeting. Greg said we're going to be appointing a new counselor, so we should probably wait to do that. So we'll have some updated photos for you next year.
What's changed?
You're not getting any younger, John, right?
Yeah.
I say whoever we appoint, they're not having any hair.
I said we do wasting up this time.
I bring in someone to put in.
Yeah, that's right.
You kind of look like 4 bobbleheads there.
I'll bring my my much more handsome stunt double.
And within the internal service fund, it's divided into general government, administration and finance, public works, and non-departmental. This is all in Fund 90. So that's what we spend it on. Who pays it? It's split among our operating funds: general fund, water, sewer, street, and urban renewal. So within general government, this is all the mayor and council expenses. The big add here is that APP item for the phase 1 of the community engagement survey, kind of this, let's reach out and engage with the community, do a scientific survey to find out what the community's desires are for services and what we then can provide to them. Getting some feedback from them, that's the big add here, and that's $100,000 for that first phase. Within admin and finance, we budget our audit function, legal function, planning. This is where we pay insurance out of, all of our computer, to both desktops and servers for the non-public here, as well as the phones. This is really just kind of the nuts and bolts, stuff you need to run a business, keep the lights on, phones on, the security people that unlock the front doors. If we don't pay them, they'll lock us in or out, depending. Public Works admin, this is to allocate, again, IT, vehicle fleet costs to all of our utility operating funds. The non-departmental, this is generally it's the expenses for operating this building: electricity, water, cleaning. Spread that out across the entire operation. So that gets us through all of our functions and funds. So I'm going to just briefly recap. These are actually copies of slides from prior, but you might have. So Our operating revenues in total are $5.2 million for this year. Our operating expenses are 4.6. We did see an increase this year in operating revenues, but we saw a little bit more of an increase in operating expenses. So that's been a long-term trend. It's not much, but every year that gets whittled away a little bit. And as we covered in the 5-year, we built an inflation assumption in for the next, not this next year, but the following year, that would come back down to something reasonable. If that doesn't happen, and we see the cost for wastewater treatment, the bill we get from the sheriff, what the fire department's charging us, what we need to pay for chemicals and electricity for operating our utilities, if that stays up in that range, those operating expenditures are going to start increasing a lot faster than our operating revenues. Not a problem now, but it's something to be mindful of that we're trying to track and watch as things kind of progress, and also find ways to try and keep those operating expenditures down. Just recap of the capital. We're spending a total of $1.8 million in capital. That is primarily the Halsey Street crossings is the big project. And then there's $300,000 or $260,000 for the master plan and utility plan update. So most of the parks funding is funded either through SDCs or grants. That would be the idea, is that the bulk of that would come through there. As John said, we're waiting to see what our master plan has before we take a big cut at it. And on the general fund side, we really want to get that feedback from our community in form of the community engagement survey to find out, this building took 20 years to plan, save for, finance, and construct. It was a very long-term, big picture, big vision thing to go out and achieve and be able to buy debt without any general fund debt. Then kind of the question we're going to be asking is, what's that next thing, the next big community enhancement, community amenity that we want to start looking at? That's not just a 1-year slice, but it's a 5, 10, 15-year slice of what's that service that we need to provide to the community to really enhance the livability of Wood Village. So with all that to say, this is a period where we're accumulating resource and looking towards what's the next thing that we're going to be doing, both utilities and for the general fund. Total budget all funds, 14.8 million, and that's as proposed, but there's more. So that's what the city manager proposed in order to maintain current service levels. You have before you some discretionary requests. There's not a lot of discretionary requests. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Greg, and then M as a.
So these discretionary funds, before we start into this is something that the council reviewed during their council retreat, I'm guessing. Is this
Some of
where
them,
some of this
yeah, we're
came
kind
from?
talked about. I mean, there's really only one that's kind of a new item. So the first one, the community events grant, what that is we've seen over the past couple of years, call it grassroots community members putting on events. The biggest one being Las Posadas, put on by a group of our Hispanic Latinx community. And as that event has grown from kind of a neighborhood area to more of a regional event, there's been requests for what can the city do to help support this event that's really grown and gained legs. We've also seen some interest in it's like a Cinco de Mayo event. And so council said, it might be good to have a little pot of money that we could support events
I'm all for
that are, ground up, that we're not running, we're not hosting, but we can support if it meets kind of the, those city goals, that it's inclusive, it's celebrating our community. There should be some funds for that. So that's that 5,000. The next one under that community engagement programming for 6,000. That's one of those things that as we look upon our vast audience here, and there is no one.
I'm surprised we didn't have some bunnies out here.
Again, part of the research we're going to be doing the year ahead is why don't we get participation, whether it be at council meetings, parks meetings, budget meetings, workshops, open houses? Why aren't people here? And what are those gaps? And then helping fund whether gee, it'd be nice. I can't come because I'm worried about my child. Well, great, bring your child here. Now there's childcare in the conference room and we'd pay for that. Maybe it's some kind of incentives or food at like a workshop or open house or translation services. So these are funds to remove barriers so people can participate or be part of what we do here that structures our great city. I'm going to skip the next one. That's for M to pitch.
Of course, you know that the other thing is that we've talked about our absence, though, is that a lot of it is because people are actually very happy with what we're doing.
And that's the question. We don't really know why people don't show up. Are they, gee, city, you're doing great things. I'm comfortable with what you're doing. Is it, gee, city, I don't know what you're doing, or gee, city, I'd like to be more involved, but can't because of X. So that's what we're going to help try to explore in the year and a half ahead.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we have a bit of money that we can do some things progressively. The PERS side account, this is matching what we did last fiscal.
2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so last
year, but it'd be 2 fiscals ago.
Yeah. At that time, there's actually a state match for this. There's no state match this time, but what we saw was you saw that rate buy down for PERS. And what this does is, it worked for, flattening the curve. We know the rates are going to increase on our PERS accounts for liabilities. If we can invest a pot of money and that earns 8%, give or take, versus the bank at 0.5%, this money sits in our PERS side account, earning 8%, buying down our future potential liability that whether we fund it up front or as we go, we pay for that. If we can get 8% interest and it's buying down that future rate, it kind of protects our long-term ability to continue to provide services, because instead of a 18% increase, maybe it's 14%. And as we've seen with inflation and our margin keep dwindling, investing now could help us down the road or help the next people in our seats not have to worry about what are we going to do about PERS. So that's that investment. So it really is, it leaves our, bank account for the city, it goes to a different bank account that earns actually higher interest than where we're able to do. And would you like me to pitch your tree? So what this is we were talking with Sire Equity, and they've been sponsoring the tree lighting event for, I want to say 4 or 5 years now, and they bring that 26-footer at the town center. That costs them about $12,000 a year. I want to say they're no longer able to do that. I'm not going to say the whys or the reasons. They're just saying we can't do that anymore. There is the opportunity to then buy essentially a 26-foot-ish tree. You might be able to get taller if you buy it on sale, and a pre-lit, and actually have it here in our civic center and bring the event back to City Hall. But that is an ad. This is a one-time capital. You buy the tree. I don't know how long these last, but it's been the same provider at the town center for 5 years, and the tree was still looking good. Oh, great.
God, take care.
That was 20 years.
20 years.
So these artificials last 20 to 30 years, projected, I suppose.
Maybe we got 10 years out of it, I think.
For $33,000, I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because we're bringing.
This is a live tree?
No, so they're built-in panels. It's really quite cool. So there's a metal frame that gets built in sections, and then you unravel, I'll call it a skirt around each section that looks like a tree. And that includes the lights. You could do then garland ornaments, and then it's anchored in the middle, typically with like 55-gallon drums full of water, such, in our wind. So you have everything tied together in the hollow middle. So you won't tip over, you won't do any of that stuff.
Question, storing this and the weight of this to move it around.
That's why we're buying a new backhoe.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Mayor and Charlotte, that was from Stan, who said, that's why we're buying a new backhoe.
Yeah. That's right.
So M, what's the,
So storage, I think this is something that we're actually trying to work with Sire Equity, since I know that they would like to still continue the partnership with the city. So one of the asks at what we are doing is, if we purchase this tree, would you guys be able to store it? So it is in talks right now, and probably cover the cost for additional lighting if needed.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, but if they
Hopefully I'll
cover the
give it
cost of
a
the
better use.
storage, are they still, I mean, I think one of the reasons that they paid for the tree in the past is that they like having the event in town center.
Yeah.
Are they gonna pay to store it for us to go and pick it up and bring it back to the city hall and civic center to put on the event?
Yeah, that is also the ask as well. So, that's kind of one of those things that we're requesting is if we do purchase that tree, if they could cover those costs of storing it or any additional cost that comes with it.
That would be if we continue to do it at the Fred Meyer site. So Sire would pay if we continue to do it there. If they say, that's great, you bought a tree, but we don't want to store it, then we have the option of bringing it back here and having the event here. So
And we do have, I'll call it storage options. We didn't get too far down the weeds and the mechanics, not knowing if the budget committee would approve this investment. If you all say that seems like a smart move / we either want it here, then we'll work on trying to find a solution of where it could be stored. It might be some panels are in our event storage area and some pieces are at ops. Just depending on where we have low impact storage, we'll call it. So it's really, this is discretionary. You tell us, do you like this?
And how about setup and tear down? I think the last time I was over there, they had, I'll say, a handful of personnel setting the tree up.
In a very unsafe manner.
In a very unsafe manner. I wasn't gonna go that far, but is that something that we can add to, and I'm assuming Public Works, or would we contract that out, or?
So that was also something that had been asked with Sire Equity too. So they are in talks right now to see if that would be possible.
Does this take a crane?
No, so the current provider actually would just kind of muscle up each panel. Like I said, it wasn't the safest. They'd have some ladders, they climb on the metal skeletal structure. I'll call it the more appropriate way is one of those like scissor lift devices. Yeah. So you've got fall protection and, you use that to lift it up as you get higher and higher. And then
How tall is this again?
26 feet.
Oh, that's not super.
It's not unreal. We're not getting a 40 or 50 footer. I mean, maybe get a 32, if we can get a coupon.
Yeah.
It's
If we buy it on Black Friday.
outside of the tree question. It's kind of nice having it up at the town center, isn't it? It seems to me that it brings people together there that may not otherwise drive down here to be a part of some of the celebrations.
Oh, they would.
So that's another thought related to this. Not talking about the logistics of this tree and moving it.
You're speaking of more vision, right?
Yeah,
And the more feeling you get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the community, the choirs come to it. It's a bigger draw for our schools to bring their choirs to the town center than it would be to bring their choirs here to sing for audiences. And I think that throughout that holiday period, it just seems like that's a greater opportunity for us as a city council, organizing an event to have exposure and engagement with folks beyond our community.
Put it this way, if you all like the idea and like whether it's at the town center working with Sire for storage and install, or it's here kind of on our own, if you just say, we like the idea, we'll figure out the mechanics either way.
Yeah.
Well, the mechanics of all of that is up to the council. I think as far as budgeting, it's up to the budget committee.
Yeah, it's really
I would hope that we would have events here for singing and things like that, though, regardless of where the tree ends up. Because I loved coming to the old city hall, having the hot chocolate and Santa Claus come there and all of that. And I can just picture that here. That was absolutely beautiful. All the high schools singing.
Yeah, I can do it. I remember those.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
realize
It
that's
was-
not a budget thing.
It was filled to capacity and
Yes.
it was, the advantage to town center, when Councilor Meyer was saying that we get more people, a lot of those more people that we get came to Fred Meyer to go shopping that night. And then, miraculously saw the tree that had already been there for a week
Yeah.
when they walked out of the store and saw the choirs, and so they stopped to listen, and that's why it's a larger crowd. But you know, we know that the fire code capacity for Old City Hall was 99 people, and we were more than that on a lot of occasions. I mean, sometimes you had to alternate being in the room with people that had been stuck outside,
Yeah.
and they were all there to see the choir and all there to see Santa
Good.
Claus. None of
Well,
them
I
were-
didn't ever attend it,
none-
so
none of them were
you're
there.
giving me, you're giving me information that I didn't have. I
Yeah.
wasn't living in the city then.
Exactly. Well,
So
you
if
know,
it's
and
been a
it's,
great success having it
yeah.
at City Hall,
oh, absolutely.
you know, that's great.
Yeah, but you know, and it had its ups and downs. But when we
Yeah,
had it at Old City Hall, we actually lit one of our live trees, and we know that we lost a lot of lights and equipment to ice and to wind, and
Yeah.
but I would say that if we're going to move it back to City Hall, that we go back to lighting one of the big trees, maybe one that's in the grove of trees that we saved, you know, during the construction
Yes.
process, and
That would be cool.
maybe the one closest to City Hall. You know, we put lights and a star on that, and just, you know, because you know, it was a pretty big source of pride for Nobody Else Council, you know, when we were lighting a 90-foot tree and putting a 6-foot star on the top of it, and you could see the star from the freeway.
Oh, it was cool.
I mean, that was kind of a cool deal about the old City Hall location as well. And so, you know, you know, I mean, I'm not against it, but I also don't want to see our public works staff having to try to assemble it or you know, and have an injury or something like that because we were putting up the Christmas tree. You know, if we're going to bring it back to City Hall, I'd rather just hire the arborist and have them take on the liability of getting our tree up.
Okay, so let's stay with the budget and move on to the next item of the
Go ahead.
street for
I-
30,000.
I have an additional question on the Christmas tree. If we were to green light it with supply chain issues, would it be available by Christmas time this year if we were to put in an order?
That's a good question.
So-
Oh,
They are available.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do have a couple comments, actually.
I'm trying to help John here. He likes to have
Oh,
things move,
I
keep
know, we all
moving.
do, believe me. It just goes back to the community engagement program and the fact that we don't have a full of people here. And all the years I've been doing meetings here, it's normally sometimes the best meetings we had sometimes and when we had like a group of 2 or 3 students come in, they had a homework assignment, and we would engage those students in the conversation. I remember one group when we were doing our banners that you see up streets, we actually had, they were
Yeah.
here during that presentation and
Yep.
got their input on it, you know?
And we had
Whenever
volunteers
we
come
had
back
a
through, so-
full house, it was normally because there's a lot of
Engagement.
engagement to the sense of normally angry,
Oh,
misinformed people
Rate
have gotten
increases.
bad information. And so a lot of those meetings were not, had to do a lot of work to bring the audience around to understanding what the meeting was about and not maybe some bad information they had received. So when I look at this budget meeting, concerned citizens here, it tells yes, go ahead and engage the community. But don't feel bad that we don't have a full house of people here. Feel good about it. Tells you that we're city. That's what I want to say. And as far as the Christmas tree, yeah, that's fine. Let's go ahead and budget for it. But then think about like Scott said, and as old timers, band at the city hall is special. It is a home felt small town feeling to that event rather than at a shopping mall.
I agree with Mark.
I would, and to see the choruses and singing in that small area. And this Santa Claus, Scott, remember Santa Claus at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Santa Claus, wasn't he?
I was,
But-
once, yeah.
Didn't you lose
Anyway.
50 pounds
Uh,
wearing a Santa Claus
Yeah.
outfit?
Just
But
about.
anyway,
yeah.
John too, if I
At
recall.
that point, I'll just, I'm all in favor of all this stuff, but I just wanted to,
Seth had a
my
turn?
explanation for why we have such an empty house here all the time.
But I will say the one event we've had here in collaboration with the community, I mean, we had probably close to 150 people, which was the grand opening.
Right.
I mean,
Oh,
give
and
it
I
a-
missed that.
in
And that's-
conjunction with the
yeah.
grand opening.
That's what, those are events, that's when you want people
Yeah.
here, yeah.
And then again, from that draw, people have been have felt more inviting to come to City Hall.
Exactly.
And so that relationship has been established. And so I personally would like to bring more events to City Hall because again, it does make it seem that the city, not that it hasn't before, but now is making more of a conscious effort to again, it's a public building to open it up for those people that might traditionally not come during business hours and still be like, oh, okay, here's where I can come and do these things. And I think we've
Exactly.
seen that already.
But like I'm saying, don't feel bad if you don't have a full house during a meeting.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
you
Because,
I've been to those meetings where you had a full house. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. It's not a happy, joy
They're
moment.
not usually
It's-
there to tell you how
Yeah,
great a job you're doing.
Exactly right.
If this is a budget question, then, I would propose we just, we fund it, we approve the funding and do some more research on the tree. And then we can talk about, how great it's going to be to have it here at the city hall. 'Cause it
Yes,
sounds like those have been great events in the past. So we,
yes.
that per site account, those needs some conversation.
So you have these
Uh,
discretionaries, though. You still have to give us these other three, right? The water, sewer and street. Is that the 30 and 10, 100,000 and you skipped the slide and 50,000?
Yeah, so this is the discretionary. So the capital you saw before is already baked into the budget. These are things that weren't, that'd be added to it.
So
And
how
here's
much
the-
of this do we get to
That's the
choose or
things.
not choose? And
All
because
of
these
it.
are huge difference in amounts.
Yeah, so let's kind of covered all of the things topically. We've got some slides.
Oh, good. More slides.
Yeah, so
Five slides?
the first one is just, what can we afford in the general fund? The maximum amount that we could spend is 1.8 million. You have $160,000 of ask in front of you. And that 164,000 is also below our operating margin after capital. Next slide, I just think this was M's wish list. And this was things that we already covered.
Do you want this slide or the next?
The next one.
We
This
don't want to
was-
go back. Are we gonna, when we look at it this way, are we gonna get to per side accounts again?
That's the next one right after
Okay,
this.
all right.
Oh, okay.
That one.
So this is the one you guys wanted to talk about. So as Greg mentioned, we made this investment 2 fiscal years ago. We got our actuarial back. So the way that this works is we take the money, they invest it on our behalf. If we don't do that, then they just increase the amount of money that we pay them. So the best way to look at this is these blue bars are what PERS thinks that we need to contribute to pay for what we're gonna owe. And as you can see, right now, we're paying about $300,000. They are projecting in 10 years, that's gonna be closer to 550. So if we took the proposed amount, which is $300,000, and deposited that in the site account, that would earn whatever the PERS fund returns. And when we took this to council initially, I think as part of the 5-year forecast, and we also presented that to the budget committee. PERS, if you look at it at 5, 10, 15, 20, varies anywhere between 7 to 9% return, annual return. So the idea here is that we would put that money in, and then the amounts in red are how much less they would require from us and build into our rate that we have to pay. So essentially, we put $300,000 in, and they kind of credit that back to us over the next 20 years as money they would have asked from us that they're not going to ask. And as Greg said, the concern looking long-term is we know that there is a hump about 10 years out, where that's about 30 years after the big PERS reforms, where they created the tier 2 and the tier 3 back in the late 90s, early 2000s to help contain the long-term costs. Those went into effect. That's about 30 years afterwards. And that's when they think that contributions are going to peak. So what we're proposing is, we made the investment with the state match 2 years ago. We would propose to do this this year. And what that would do is that in future years, the amount of increase in our personnel services would be less than what it would have been had we not done it. And like Greg said, it really comes down to, if we've got the money, we can either let it sit in our local government investment pool account and earn what's currently 0.55%. They've increased it 5 basis points in the last year. Or it could be sitting in a PERS account, which historically has returned 7 to 8%. And that's not money that they keep, that's money that they credit back to us in the rate that they charge. And so really, this is kind of a long-term way to manage our cost increases and get some more return on money that we normally wouldn't be able to get a return on.
So when the savings that are, call it a savings from what you are projecting that we're going to have at the end of this year, just the percentage that you said.
Ending fund
Ending
balance?
Fund balance, can you roll that over other than the water, or are you allowed to, roll that over into PERS as well? Into
So-
the savings?
Where this money comes from, it would come out of our fund balances, and that could be savings from the current year, or that could have been savings from prior year.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be just general fund, or?
No, and
the
this-
split is shown here, this last one, where it's street, water, sewer, and then general fund.
So we would put
Oh,
three.
this comes out of, I thought.
Yeah,
it was
this would come out of-
request for budget.
No, this would come out of, so we would, the request is to put $300,000 into the side account.
I see.
120 would come from general fund, 30 from street, 100 from
Thank
water,
you.
and 50,
Okay.
yeah,
I thought the Christmas tree was $33,000.
it is.
It is.
Oh, it is.
It is, it's all
Okay.
out of.
Yeah, that is for real.
That's for real.
So yeah,
Okay.
each of the rows is
I
kind of.
thought you were wanting to take PERS money that was gonna go to a Christmas tree.
No, no.
And roll it, okay, because I thought, oh, okay.
We're not, I don't think we'd take PERS money and buy, well, it's not a bad idea
Well,
to buy
you
a
know,
Christmas tree.
I didn't know where you were going, you know?
Yeah.
At first I had it down, and then you started talking about saving money and putting it into, how to save money into PERS.
Yeah, and so no, this would be taking from our beginning fund balance and rather than let the money sit in our bank account,
Yeah, okay, got
we
it.
would put it in
Okay.
this account that would actually earn us a return.
You can see where I got mixed up
cool.
with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
It's a discretionary request, so.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, because they're not in the budget numbers you just saw. They come from the margins.
Okay.
And for general fund, we know the margin's 277,000. All of this is 165, give or take. Then street, water, sewer. So we can afford all of it.
You
out
can
of-
record, oh, got it.
out of the
Okay, so
margin.
this PERS size at 300,000, we can afford to roll that.
Without
into that.
dipping into savings essentially. Now, that would be
Okay.
money that
All
wouldn't
right.
go into savings,
I'm like,
but we're
Okay, I
not
missed
dipping
one.
into the saving.
Maybe one out of all of the Christmas.
okay,
things
thank
Um,
you.
that we did.
so since we're
I'm
not
not
spending that
sure.
operating margin, as John said, we're not spending the operating margin on capital for this year because we're waiting on the community engagement survey and the master plans for the utilities.
Right.
We want to put it into something that will help us defray our operating expenses down the road.
Kind of again, set up, much like we were set up by past, staff and electeds and appointeds. We want to continue that trend that the future generation has money to keep up the building, to reduce overheads and operating costs.
Mhm.
So instead of spending every dime we've got and then some today, because we won't be here tomorrow, we're looking out for tomorrow.
Okay.
And I don't mean the literal tomorrow. I mean, I hope I'm here tomorrow.
So now that we have time for questions or comments, I want to ask one more tree question.
Mm.
And I've been rolling it over in my head how to ask it. So Sire is saying that they don't want to do it anymore, that they can't do it anymore. Do they rent a different tree every year and pay to have it put up? Or do they own a tree and that what they don't want to do or can't do anymore is pay to have it put up?
The last piece. So
Okay,
they
so
rent
we,
it.
so we could also
through-
budget to pay to put it up. Or we could say, hey, Sire, we think your tree is worth $7,500. And we could spend that and buy their tree from them and run it until end of life.
So
So
they don't own a tree currently. They pay someone they pay like an event company that stores it. They pay
Okay.
them a fee to
Right.
rent it and set it up for them.
So
they
then where do we propose that Sire would store a tree for us? If they're not already doing it, how do we know that they can and that they have a space?
So before, like the last couple years, they've been hiring lighting solutions and that's probably the company that store their own trees. So they usually bring it out and have staff to install those tree and the lighting. We did ask Sire Equity on their property. However, they did say that their space is being filled up. So there is a chance that they wouldn't be able to store, but they're working some things out. That is the only update that I've received, but it's in talks with staff. So as soon as I get more of an update on that, I can follow up on that with you.
Yeah, it just feels like we're having this discussion only because Sire said they couldn't do it anymore, and that if we'd had 2 years advance notice from Sire, that this actually would have been a 2-year project. I mean, I'm just in my head. I mean, obviously, I'm fine with letting it go. We've got the money. We're hardly spending any discretionary funds, but it just seems like it's $33,000 ask with zero plans. And I'm not being critical. I know you haven't had time to plan, but I mean, we got so many answers. There's so many questions about a $33,000 tree, and we have zero answers. I mean, it's almost like we're suggesting buying it just so we don't have to potentially go without a tree 1 year.
But Mayor, if you considered the fact that it would take less than 4.5 years to pay for it at your bid price of $7,500.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I was just suggesting that to, buy a tree and run it till the end of life. And if this year was the end of life, then maybe we'd pay less than $7. I just, pulled that out of the air. But
And the other part is that
but
we're just
they
putting
don't
this
own a tree, so
into
it
a
won't work.
budget, then the council can decide later how they
Right.
want to
Yes.
spend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we won't enter into a contract to purchase without having a plan ironed out that we can bring in front of council for an actual event. So rest assured, even if we have the money, we're not just going to spend it because we have it.
We just bought a piece of land. Let's build a shed on it and stick it in there.
Yeah.
Byron's been quiet this whole evening because he's
Yeah,
got an
that's- there
island
you go.
picked out.
He's got it.
He
He's
was
got
just
it. Yeah.
waiting-
He's got an
waiting
island
for a
picked
pick of
out.
this moment. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Okay, what's next?
Well, what's next? If there are no additional questions, comments, we're ready for motions. And we do have, I want again to point out, we talked about it at the start of the meeting. There we go. So the first one is the property tax rate. Then we have a motion that does not include Play East Recreation, and that's where then all of you can vote on it. The second motion is only to add recreation services, and that's where Councilor Rios Campos can declare his conflict of interest as the manager of Play East. You all can then take action on that. If you're not ready to take action on the budget, you can also move to continue the budget hearing to May 12th.
Ready, gentlemen and ladies? Oh, I have a question. I had noticed that on our citizen members that we have Ray Robinson.
yes.
And I see that we have 3 participants. And I know that the mayor is one of them. And I wanted to reach out to who that is.
It's actually, so there's the mayor
I didn't
and
want to miss out on Miss Robinson. if
Commission-
she was here,
member
because I wanted to
Mrs. Harden.
recognize her.
the other one is us as an entity
Okay.
and logistically how to work the system so we can live stream on YouTube and share the screen and have like use these cameras as a webcam. The other one is her computer in her office. We have to do the hide self
Okay.
view, and to do that, you gotta.
I wanted to apologize that we had.
No.
missed
No,
out on
our
that.
online members are,
Okay.
we have been engaging with our
Okay.
online members.
All right, so, thank you. So is there a motion?
I move to authorize.
the property tax levy, the permanent tax rate for the city of Wood Village in the amount of 3.1262 per thousand of assessed value.
Have a
Second.
motion, is there a second? I heard a second.
That was the mayor.
Okay, if there's no other further discussion, is there a vote?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes. Is there a motion now to recommend an adoption?
I move to recommend the city council adoption of the 2022-23 budget, excluding recreation services as amended by the budget committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have an approval of the budget? An adoption of the budget?
Aye.
All in favor, I take it? Yes,
Aye.
okay. And then, do we have to,
I move to recommend the city
Hold on, hold on.
council.
Yeah, declare a conflict of interest.
So.
Oh, do we have
Counselor
a-
Jairo Rios Campos recuses himself from this voting.
okay.
I move to recommend the city council adoption of the 22-23 budget for recreation services as amended by the budget committee.
I second it.
Yes.
All right.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote on this budget?
Aye.
Aye.
Budget passes.
All right, that is all we have for you
And
this
we
evening.
have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Charlotte,
Yes.
Oh,
second that a motion to adjourn, will you?
Yeah, okay, I adjourn. You all
okay.
adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed.
Congratulations. That's continues our tradition of recommending a budget in one meeting. So
Yes.
I didn't bring that up at the beginning because I've decided I'll stop putting pressure on people. But we did it, and I'm very glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I
Beth,
just,
you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank all of you. It's
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.